Today, going to be talking about how safe Cyprus really is. And in my experience, Cyprus is not as safe as you think. It's actually safer. You're watching Cyprus Unfiltered, where I tell you real stories about real life here in Cyprus. Now, look, going to be talking about crime today. Going to be talking about a whole bunch of things because I know Cyprus is in the news at the moment, and I thought now's a good time to talk about the crime and talk about everything else that's going on in the world. So we've got petty crime we're going to go through. We're going to go through some serious crime. We're going to look at the corruption, going to look at the terrorism, and also going to look at the regional conflict and the risk of war, because that seems to be a hot topic right now. Before we start, I do need to talk about how Cyprus is divided up. This isn't going to be a massive history lesson, but I just want to clarify for the point of this video. So you've got 4 areas of Cyprus, and I don't mean the cities. I mean, you've actually got 4 zones, if you like, that Cyprus is divided up into. You've got the Turkish-controlled side, which is the north. And this is essentially where safe becomes complicated because it's not just about crime. It's politics, it's jurisdiction, and what happens if something goes wrong contractually and things like that. So there is a whole world of differences in the north that we're not going to go into tonight. That's not what tonight's about. But you've got the south, and the south is the internationally recognized Republic of Cyprus, whereas the north, it's only recognized by Turkey. Now, take from that what you will. Like I say, we're not going into the north and south tonight, but we are just dividing this up so you can see. Now, if you visit north, for most people, for visitors, trips are fine. Just you're going there and you visit as a day tourist or whatever, it's absolutely fine. But if you're buying something, that could be a bit tricky. But anyway, you've got the north, you've got the Turkish-controlled side, you've got the UN buffer zone, and this is where UN personnel are. You've then got the UK sovereign bases, and then finally, you've got the Republic of Cyprus, which is the south. And that's the bit we're going to be talking about tonight, because the south is an EU member, also a member of NATO. And for those of you that don't know, I'm going to just show you this on a map. It's going to be a little bit interactive tonight. I'm going to show you this on a map as to how Cyprus is divided up. So for those of you that have seen a map of Cyprus before, you might have seen this line that goes right through the middle of the island. Well, that is essentially a UN buffer zone. Pretty much everything south of that is the Republic of Cyprus, and everything north of that line is the Turkish-controlled side. And then you've got a couple of areas which are the UK sovereign bases. And just to make that super clear, I'm going to show you this map. And that shows you the 4 jurisdictions of Cyprus. So for the purpose of tonight, we are talking predominantly about the red area. We're going to be talking about the Republic of Cyprus. And let's be honest, it's going to cover the United Kingdom as well, because technically when you drive through these areas, you're actually going through the United Kingdom. You go there, and if you've ever driven through, the houses are like the UK, the police cars are just like they are in the UK, the ambulances, the fire engines, it's the bases. That's where things happen. And this is part of why Cyprus gets talked about in terms of conflict, because you've got the UK bases on the island. It's an ex-UK colony, or ex-British colony. So, that being said, petty crime. Let's start with the petty crime. Because when people talk about crime, people talk about safety in Cyprus. That's generally where people are starting. If people are coming on holiday, people want to live here and things like that. So you're talking about thefts, you're talking about burglaries, you're talking about, Cyprus and what is it like to live here day to day? And I'll be honest, it's generally low drama. It's low crime day to day, but it isn't zero. People think it is, but it's not. People get burgled, people get robbed, cars get broken into, and you'll even get scammed out of money. Yeah. In fact, speaking of being scammed, there was a gang or several gangs. Haven't heard about them for a little while, but they used to go around the car parks in Lidl, in Philippos, depending on where you are, the different supermarkets, and they would literally change your wipers. They would take your wipers off the car, they'd destroy your ones, they'd put your new ones on. When you come out of the shop, they would try and scam you for money until you've got to buy their wipers. And this was prolific for quite a while. Probably, I didn't see about it as much last year, but certainly the year before, it was absolutely prolific. They're preying on old people and just scamming people out of money, But crime happens here, but I want to go through some of the stats tonight. Now, I've tried to make this as factual as possible, because a lot of people that talk about crime in Cyprus, they talk about, it feels safe. It's safer than England. Okay, is it? What makes it safer than England? What makes it safe, especially when we're in the Middle East and you've got conflict going on? What makes Cyprus safe? So I'm going to show you some stats. And what I've been doing tonight is I have been doing some research using AI, and I've tried to verify a whole bunch of information. I'm using Google Gemini for this, but I've cross-referenced it with some manual searches, and I've also cross-referenced it with some other automated AI searches on ChatGPT. I want to show you the stats. I want to show you what it's actually like compared to just what you hear and just what you see on Facebook and everything else, because I think getting the true feel for this is where you need to go so that you're not living in the fear that anything, people that read the press, you read the news, you're living in fear all the time. So I've done a few different searches on this, and you see here, I'm comparing overall total crime. Now, the way the crime is measured in the UK versus Cyprus is different because, as it says here, the UK, they pretty much record everything as a crime, as a statistic. And therefore, it massively skews it in Cyprus's favor because everything gets recorded in the UK. And in Cyprus, it's typically the serious stuff that gets recorded, not necessarily the stuff that's deemed as petty. So if you ignore that measurement and we come down here, what does it then look like? So if we do it for the serious crime, it is still significantly higher in the UK than it is in Cyprus. Now, significant crime are things like sexual assaults, things like homicide, and things like that, right? Now, when you're looking at the stats here, you'll see that year on year, it's worse in the UK. And what I've got on the right here is just some charts. So we've got the homicide rate, which actually, when you look at Cyprus, you kind of think, well, it's actually on par with the UK. Now, the reason why you get these spikes is because you've got 70 million people in the UK. And in Cyprus, you've got probably 1.3, 1.4 million people. So this is the rate per 100,000. So the rate per 100,000 as a percentage actually is not too dissimilar in terms of homicide. It's not that dissimilar. But you'll probably see and hear more of it in the UK because you've got more people. So as a total number, yes, the UK has more homicides than Cyprus, but as a percentage of the population, you can see there, it's not too dissimilar. There's some spikes, but otherwise it's, less than 2, let's say, for both. It starts to widen though when you start looking at other offences. So you look at sexual assault here, right? The UK going up and up and up. Cyprus is pretty steady, but it's down near the zero, right? Now, I know, having spoken to people in the UK, I know, having read the conviction rates for sexual assault in the UK, I think it's like less than 2% of rapes or rapists get convicted. And it's almost legalized because if only ever 2% of them get convicted, then the rest of it that gets reported and doesn't get convicted, it's just not a nice place. And you can see it's just getting worse and worse and worse. I'm not going to go into the reasons why it's getting worse. That's a different video altogether. But as a whole, it's getting worse. And you're looking at petty crime here. So, all right, it's actually apparently coming down in the UK. I'm not quite sure how that's working. But anyway, apparently it's coming down in the UK. In Cyprus, it's kind of up and down, but it's relatively stable. But the consistency is that the petty crime in Cyprus is a lot less than it is in the UK. Again, it's per 100,000 people, but it's still a lot less. And then you've got the serious and violent crime. People getting attacked, people getting beaten up, stabbed, killed, whatever. People being mugged for something. Again, it is a lot less in Cyprus than it is in the UK. So you can see the statistics there, right? Now, if I go to just an exec summary on this, according to the data, you're 2.5 times more likely to be robbed or burgled in the UK. You're more likely to be a victim of serious or sexual assault in the UK. You're more likely to have your car stolen in the UK. However, you are more likely to be involved in a fatal traffic accident in Cyprus. And yes, the Cyprus drivers are horrific, but it is a crime. It's a crime that they do. They talk on mobile phones and everything else. There's another video coming on that soon. But anyway, you can see it's kind of stacking in the UK's, in Cyprus's favor. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to just talk about on this is the actual heat map of Cyprus. Now, I got Gemini to pull this together because it's kind of, okay, Cyprus is safer than the UK, is it? And you go, okay, well then where are the hotspots in Cyprus? If you're looking to move to Cyprus, where is the most amount of crime? Where's the least amount of crime? Now in the UK, you can go to police.uk and you can see the crime statistics for all over the UK and you can see the crimes when they were reported and everything else. You don't have that in Cyprus. So pull this together again from the data, from the reports that this could find. Paphos comes out as the worst. Now, you might see that as surprising and go, why is Paphos worse than everywhere else? Well, it's because, and as it says here, I'm pointing like you can see my finger. As it says here, it's got the highest rates because it's skewed by tourism. Loads of tourists end up in Paphos. They all end up down Coral Bay and everything else. And so you get lots of petty theft. And when I say lots, you've seen up here, it's actually not as serious as it is in the UK. But for Cyprus, you'll get more petty theft over here. And then you still get crime in the other areas, but predominantly it seems like you get more petty theft here and it's skewed towards tourist areas. You still get crime over in Larnaca. Again, it's the seasonal stuff, as it's saying there. It's the seasonal stuff, it spikes in the tourist season. Why? Because tourists are easy to prey on. Tourists do stupid things. You know, when you're on holiday, you're carefree and you just don't necessarily have the same safety precautions that you would back home. So tourists are easy pickings. So that is the stats. Now, as a simple rule, if you don't make it easy for people, for opportunists, which is basically what they are, then you're going to avoid a lot of the crime. Now, locals say the crime is increasing, and it's not like it used to be. We speak to the locals here. They're all going, crime isn't like it used to be. Crime is going up. Well, it's going up everywhere in the world, right? But Cyprus does seem to be maybe 20, 30 years behind where the UK used to be in a lot of ways, in tech, not tech, not all tech, but in lifestyle and culture and things like that. The way people go about their lives here, it's like the UK used to be. But crime is going up everywhere. However, when you talk to the Cypriots and you start to dig in and you just go, okay, what do you mean? Like what can't you do that you used to be able to do? And they go, well, you can't leave your car running anymore. Oh, what do you mean? Well, we used to be able to pull up at a supermarket, leave the car running, go inside and do our shopping and come out and the car would still be there. Right? Oh, okay, that's weird. You'd see it. And in fact, you still see it now, where I've been in a coffee shop before and people will literally park up on the curb and they just walk off and their car's running. The keys are in the ignition. And people actually leave their cars running here in Cyprus. It's mad. But the locals are saying, you can't do that anymore because people are stealing our cars. Well, if you come from the UK and you leave your keys in the car with the engine running and you're not anywhere to be seen, somebody's probably going to steal it. So is Cyprus getting worse? Yes, probably. But actually, if you've got that UK mindset and you don't leave your car running, it's like people having their car stolen off their drive when they're trying to defrost the windscreen in the winter. If you're going to leave the keys in the car, you're kind of asking for trouble. Now, just because you used to be able to do that in Cyprus and they now can't, they're seeing it as crimes going up. They're saying you can't leave your doors unlocked anymore. Well, again, I wouldn't leave my door unlocked in the UK anyway. Can't leave your windows open when you go out. Again, I wouldn't leave my windows open when I go out anyway, right? And so if you wouldn't do it in the UK, a lot of the stuff that's happening, it's all opportunistic. If people see an unlocked car, they're going to open a door and try and take stuff out. If you're leaving your bags laying around, if you're leaving stuff on in the cars, on the back seats, if you're leaving your bags in restaurants or whatever, you leave your phones on the table, they're all easy wins for people just coming and wanting to steal, right? Now, the other one is people say, people are stealing stuff out of our gardens. Okay, what do you mean? Well, have bikes stolen out of the gardens and things like that. And you're like, well, don't leave your bike on display then, in the nicest possible way. I understand that the Cypriot culture used to be you could do all of that stuff. And I'll be honest, actually, for the most part, I still see a lot of that. Like I say, I still see cars running with nobody in them, the keys in them. You go into restaurants, the amount of times I've gone into restaurants and there's just mobile phones laying around from customers. They've gone toilet, left their bags there. I do it. I will go into a cafe and I can, if I'm there working on my own or whatever, you just leave your stuff and you go toilet because most of the time people won't take it. But now, some of the times they do, right? So that's the Cypriot view of crime going up. Now, how can you relate that to your life? If you're thinking of moving to Cyprus, what can you do to try and protect yourself from some of the petty crime? Well, if you're looking to move to Cyprus, what I would say is have a search on Google for the area that you want to move to. So we did exactly that. When we were moving to Cyprus, we were searching for Emba, we were searching for like Konya, we were searching for Tala, we were searching for Paya, and we were just searching for all the different areas and seeing what the crime was happening, Laraka, and seeing what was happening in the area at the time. And you were kind of looking at the news articles at the time to see which areas were better or worse. The other one are Facebook groups. So if you go onto Facebook, you'll quite often see people reporting crimes and breakings and everything else. And it's really, really easy to get caught up in the Facebook kind of, what's the word? How to explain it? Right. When I was looking at Facebook groups, your social media feed all of a sudden starts skewing because it's what Facebook does, because it's how they market and it's how they feed you information based on what you're on. If you start searching for Cyprus crime, you start seeing more of Cyprus crime. And I was a member of some groups. And I'll be honest, after my trial living in 2022, we started looking at the crime in Cyprus based on these groups. And if you only believed the groups, you would never move to Cyprus. You'd be like, this place is horrific. And then you start doing some digging. And then you work out that some of the Facebook groups, they're owned by security companies in Paphos, in Tala. And then you go, oh, well, why would they be posting about all of the crime that's happening, any little crime, any little story they can find? Well, because they want to sell you an alarm system. So, of course, they're going to post all the bad news. If you read their groups, it is nothing but bad news, nothing but crime, crime, crime. Cyprus is horrible. And then fundamentally buy an alarm from us because we'll keep you safe, right? Now, the reason why I don't like that is because when we were first looking at moving out, obviously they've got an agenda. They want to sell you something. So, of course, they're not going to tell you Cyprus is safe because they want to sell you a bloody alarm. So they sell you an alarm, great. But I remember asking this specific question. You can probably find my posts online from 3 years ago. I remember asking the question, if I hire one of these security companies and somebody breaks into my house, the alarm goes off and the security company attends my house, great. All sounds amazing in principle. What can they do? Can they go into the house while the alarm's going off, while there's people in there stealing my stuff, and beat crap into them and hold them until the police come? Or do they just pull up outside and do they look at the house and go, oh, the alarm's going off? Well, we haven't actually got any legal rights to do anything, so we'll just have to stand here and wait. I was asking the question, which one is it? Because I don't mind paying for somebody to turn up and go in the house and do something about it and apprehend people until the police come. I'd pay for that service. I don't really want to pay for somebody to come and stand outside my house watching the alarm go off, because instead of paying these guys an annual fee or whatever, I just set a smart alarm up on my house. So when my alarm goes off, it messages me, it messages some other people, and I can turn up at my house and I can go into my house and I would probably do more than the security companies would, right? If my alarm's going off. So when you've got security companies that are pushing negative news stories and they are looking at trying to stir up fear in a group, and their agenda is to sell you an alarm, just be careful. Just make sure that what you're reading isn't too skewed to one side, because honestly, when we were reading this in 2022, I was like, holy crap, Cyprus is terrible. Like, there's nothing but burglaries. It just felt horrible. As soon as I removed myself from those groups, stopped feeling that. Didn't feel that at all. Living out here, don't feel that at all. So the point is, in terms of tips for moving, yes, Google the areas. Yes, look on Facebook, see what people are doing. But just be aware that not everybody on Facebook is posting without an agenda, because quite often they've got an agenda. Now, probably the more important things to look at is how exposed your property is from the road. And you'll know yourselves, if you've watched any of my previous videos, the things that I like and I value privacy. And I know it sounds ridiculous because I'm talking to you guys live on YouTube, but I value privacy in that I don't want somebody else to walk past my house, look over a wall and see my kids or my son in my swimming pool or see me in the pool. Like, that does not appeal to me. I don't want people to be able to just look into my garden walking past. If you've got a party going on, people can just look in. I don't like that. So if you're looking at renting a house, looking at buying a house, look at how exposed the property is from the road, but also, do people have a reason to go past your house in the first place? And this applies to anywhere, not just Cyprus. So we were looking at renting a house in Coral Bay last year before we moved into this place. And we knew the horror stories of Coral Bay, and I'm going to come on to some of those in a minute, but we knew the horror stories of Coral Bay, but this house that we liked, it had got solar panels, it ticked all the boxes, it was 4 bedrooms, it ticked all the boxes on paper. But when we turned up to the house, you literally could see inside the lounge from the main road if you had the lights on. So nighttime, like we used to drive past it, because we'd drive past it a couple of times at night just to see, and you could see inside the house if the lights were on. And for me, that's just not what I wanted. You know, it just didn't feel safe. But the other thing was that where it was positioned in Coral Bay, it was literally from the main strip. And for those of you that know Coral Bay, you'll know there's a shop called Philippos. It's a supermarket. And from the main strip in Coral Bay to Philippos, everybody would come past this house. So everybody has a reason to go past your house, which means you've got a higher footfall of opportunistic traffic to go through, and they're potentially going to see your house. Now, when we were viewing this house, the guy was like, and of course he was saying, oh yeah, it's really safe, never had any problems. And you start looking around and it kind of looks all nice, and yeah, it's got an alarm on it and stuff, and he's getting electric gates put on and stuff. And you kind of go, well, I don't know. I keep hearing bad things about Coral Bay. You know, you hear about tourists turning up in Coral Bay, and then when they've turned up, they'll go out for a meal, everything's still packed up, and they're getting burgled on the first night because people are watching the Airbnbs out there. You know, you get the organized crime. People are watching Airbnbs, watching tourists turn up, and they know which are the Airbnbs versus people that are actually living local. And so anyway, while we're looking around, I noticed that in the sliding windows, you've got these, like, all the windows in Cyprus, for the most part, slide. If you're in Europe, they'll open inwards or outwards or whatever, but the windows here tend to slide. And he'd got pieces of wood in the tracks that blocked the window from opening. And I was like, oh, what are they for? And he was like, oh, yeah, that's old habits die hard. That is, it's just, yeah, we used to put them in many years ago for a bit of extra security, but we don't really need them now. We could take them out. And I was like, yeah, right. You know, talk about BS. And I was just thinking again, okay, right. So even now he's got his relatively new windows in there, and his house in Coral Bay has got bits of wood in them to stop people forcing the windows open. I was like, don't want to live there. So again, just be mindful of the fact that if you are looking to buy or rent a house and you're worried about petty crime, you're worried about break-ins, just be sensible. Just make sure that it's not fully on display. Make sure that if you are going to be somewhere, that you're not necessarily on the tracks for people coming past your house. You don't want a high volume of footfall coming past your house all the time. Well, maybe you do. I mean, maybe it doesn't bother you, but it bothered me. So that was one of the things I looked for. And look, in terms of people breaking in, I'm going to show you actually I'm going to tell you a story and then I'm going to show you this, because when I did my trial living in 2022, I met a guy and we got talking and we kept in touch. And a little bit later on in that year, and this is about the time I was looking in all the Facebook groups and scaring the crap out of myself because thinking Cyprus is like a crime haven, I got a message from him, and he was saying how he's had a load of stuff stolen. And basically, he'd bought a 200-kilo safe, and in his safe, he'd got a whole bunch of cash, he'd got some gold, he'd got some silver, he'd got some watches, to the tune of about 35, 40 grand. 2 weeks after his safe was delivered, he was broken into, and a bunch of guys carried the safe out. I'm going to show you this because it even made the news. Now, this isn't the villa. This isn't the villa here. This is literally, I don't know what this police photo is. His villa was a standalone villa in its own place, and he'd kind of done all the right things. It was off the beaten track. There was no reason for people to go past the house. There was nothing of interest on that road unless you lived there. And he'd got a whole bunch of stuff. So I know this guy, and he'd got, like I say, to the tune of like 35, 40 grand's worth of stuff stolen. And you kind of think to yourself, well, hang on a minute. You've just spent a load of money. You've got a 200-kilo safe. And 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after delivery, somebody's stolen it. Now, I'm sorry, but that to me screams of two things. You've either got organized gangs watching the delivery companies, watching where the vans are going, where they're picking up the safes from, because they probably know where the safes are being picked up. And then they're watching where they get delivered. And nobody gets a 200-kilo safe unless you've got something valuable to put in it. So that's one option. Or, and this is me being cynical, maybe the safe companies are in on it. You know, maybe there was somebody dodgy in the company. Maybe they're passing customer lists to the gangs for a percentage. I don't know. And you'll never know. But let's assume it's the first one. Let's just assume it's gangs of people watching deliveries. That then moves you into the serious crime, the organized crime, right? And this is the bit that you don't necessarily see or hear about when you think about Cyprus. So this is why I want to talk to you about it, because if I now come back to some of the news stories, hang on one second. I'm going out of sync here. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I want to come back. Yeah, I'm going to move that one along. We'll come back to that one in a minute. Okay, let's go back to this one. Otherwise, spoil the surprise. Don't want to do that, do we? Okay, so organized crime, right? This is serious crime. So, do people get murdered in Cyprus? Yes, they do. Now, if you're a tourist or if you're living in England going, holy crap, nobody's ever been machine gunned on the M6, or, when was the last time somebody got machine gunned to death on the M1 in the UK? Well, it happens in Cyprus. Not very often, but it happens, right? So, this was, I think he's like the owner of, I can't remember which football club. I don't really watch football, but it tells you here somewhere. This chap was gunned down. Limassol. Oh, so it was Limassol. So he had a Limassol football club, I believe it was. Really wealthy guy. But anyway, long story short, him and his son, they were shot. His son survived because on the next one, son drives the father. But basically, the dad got shot. And unfortunately, he died, But this was organized crime. This was literally organized crime. Another story, for those of you watching this, fancy yourselves going to Larnaca, axes and gunshots in broad daylight next to the police headquarters, right? So this was only back end of last year. This was, so it started this year. I actually thought it was back end of last year, but anyway, so this one was back end of last year. That was like November time, October, November. There you go, October. This one, I thought this was last year, I've got to be honest. But anyway, the point is, you've got people in the streets of Larnaca with guns and axes and attacking each other. Now, you might go, holy crap, I'm not coming to Cyprus. Well, I want to be honest here, right? Serious crime exists in Cyprus. Of course it does. It exists everywhere. But it's not usually random. So you're not going to be walking down the street and get attacked by somebody with an axe. You're not going to be driving down the road and get machine gunned to death. That's not what happens to the average person. When it does happen, like in these scenarios there, it tends to be targeted. It's because of disputes or it's organized stuff. It's people who already know each other. Okay. The average person living a normal life is far more likely to deal with the petty stuff that we've just gone through than this serious types of crime. If you're not planning on becoming a drug lord, right? If you don't see yourself as a criminal mastermind and you don't fancy joining the Cypriot mafia, you're probably going to be okay. Like literally this stuff, when you see it and hear about it, it's always gang related. It's always crime related or business related. It's never just happens to a person. Like you don't read or see about it just happening to the random Joe. So why am I showing you then? Well, you need to be aware that it does happen out here. Because like I say, when was the last time you heard about somebody being machine gunned to death on the M1? Never happened. Or at least if it's happened, I don't know about it. But, it could happen here. But they're not targeting you. They're not after you. They're after them. They've got their own disputes, right? So yes, there is that serious crime out here, but it's low. It's low. It's really low. The fact that it happens though, just be aware of it. So you need the right mindset because it's the awareness without the paranoia. That's what I'm getting at. You need to be aware of it, but don't be paranoid about it because in the daily life, you're never going to see this stuff. I haven't seen it. I've lived there 2.5 years. I've never seen it. You just read about it in the news. Like, oh, did that happen? It could have been 1,000 miles away. It literally, I would never have known about it. So for me, I always feel safe. And I want to just drive this point home with another story because when I talk about feeling safe, I'm talking about day-to-day life. And I think that's what most people watching this are worried about is how safe is Cyprus day-to-day? Well, when we first moved here, we met with some friends and we went out into Paphos. And this has happened a lot since then. This was the first time it was an aha moment for me. And we went to Paphos. It was a Saturday night. I think it was about October time, something like that. And we were sat out having dinner in this restaurant. And the kids were running around the table playing and kind of being a bit loud. And we'd still got our English mentality, our English heads on going, oh, you've got to be quiet, We're in a restaurant. You can't be playing like this. You can't play in the restaurant. Even though we were sat outside in Paphos, the owner comes along to us and, oh, bloody hell, here we go. We're in trouble now. We've only been here like 2 months, 3 months, and we're already in trouble. And the owner comes along and he's like, nah, just leave them be, man. They're kids. Let them play. Let them have fun. And we're like, oh, okay. And it felt a little bit awkward, but the owners love kids out here. So anyway, we're in the middle of Paphos. Kids are playing. And there was a playground, probably about, 20, maybe 30 meters away in the distance. And you could see it from the restaurant we were at. But it was just this like inner city playground in the middle of Paphos. I'm sure people have walked past it many times if you've been here on holiday or whatever. So anyway, we're sitting there and we're watching the kids are playing. They're coming back and forth between us and the table. And at this point in time, they're over in the playground. And there must have been about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6, like a gang of teenagers, all of a sudden descended on the playground and they approach our kids. And I had this moment of like your heart in mouth. Oh God, here we go. So I'm looking at it going, gonna have to sort this out. I said to my wife, says, right, just give me a second. I'm just going to go over and see. And in my head, you're thinking the worst. Like I'm thinking they're going to sell my kids drugs. They're going to be trying to steal something from them. They're going to just be being mean and being bullies or whatever. You start thinking all the worst, right? Well, I did. maybe you're less cynical than I am. I was thinking the worst. I start walking over to them. And all of a sudden they all start laughing and they all run away. And it turned out they were all just playing tag. You'd got the teenagers playing with our kids who were like 6 years old at the time, 6, 7 at the time. They just started playing tag. I was like, what the hell? Like in the middle of Paphos on a Saturday night, you got these, literally the teenagers there playing with our kids, all having fun together. Now, I came from Leicester. I was born in Leicester. I would not take my son to Leicester on a Saturday night. Ain't happening. I wouldn't want to go through Leicester on a Saturday night with my son. Just wouldn't want to do it. Taking the same scenario, we were out last night and I was out with some friends. My son was on his scooter. My friend's son was on his bike. And we were sat, for those of you that know it, we're down the seafront in Paphos. And we were down by Pizza Express. And our kids were on the scooters, on the bikes, and they were literally just cycling around, coming up and down the pavement, well, the walkway. And they kept disappearing out of sight. Now, I wasn't worried. I literally wasn't worried. I knew that he'd be safe. And that might sound really neglectful. When we have friends come over from the UK, it's really funny because they just think we've stopped caring, right? It's like literally, he's like, where's your son? Like, where's Jacob? I don't know. He's around here somewhere. He'd be fine, you know? And the thing is, you start to relax into the Cypriot way of life. Like I'm saying, it's not like you'd believe if you'd read the news, if you read the Facebook groups. It's just not like that. But by contrast, when I'm in the UK, like if we're in a restaurant, even if we're sat in the restaurant, I don't even let my son go toilet on his own. I'll go with him. You never know what's going to happen. So I'll go with him and I'll stand outside the door. But here, don't have that worry. Just don't have that worry at all. So there you go. So there's a serious crime. I wanted to make you aware of it. What else? What else goes on with crime in Cyprus? Well, you've got corruption. Now, I haven't personally experienced corruption yet. I'm going to use the word yet. I haven't personally experienced it, but I have heard lots of stories of brown envelopes being passed around and several instances of it's one rule for us and it's one rule for others. And typically the others are the people with the cash. Now, in Cyprus, it's always been a case of it's not what you know, it's who you know. But seemingly there is an undercurrent of it's not also who you know, it's who you can pay. And if you can pay for the right things to happen, then things will happen. So there is corruption, and I say it's widely accepted. They're trying to clamp down on it, but it does seem more open than the UK. I'm sure there's plenty of places in the UK that's corrupt. You know, there'll be a lot of corruption in the UK, but it's all hidden. And it just seems to be a little bit more out in the open here. So I've never experienced it yet, at least not against me. But I wanted to mention it. You know, corruption is a thing, but again, it's never impacted me yet, or at least if it has, I haven't known about it. The only thing I would say is that, you know, we did pay somebody, and I think I've said this in one of the videos, you know, we accelerated our car thing because, you know, a guy was happy to help and I was happy to pay. So, you know, there you go. It's that type of thing. But I wouldn't say, you know, is it serious crime? No. Is it actually was beneficial in that scenario? But, you know, just be aware of it. However, there is another thing that I want to talk about before we get on to the regional conflict. Not many people talk about this. Terrorism. What's Cyprus like for terrorist attacks? Now, I am going to come onto this because, again, I did this with Gemini because I wanted to just do some research on it. And I pretty much knew anyway, but I wanted to do it so I could show you guys the stats and the figures. So according to the Global Terrorism Database, and this is the thing, and I've cross-referenced this on a couple of AIs. I've done it with ChatGPT, and I've done a bit of a manual search myself as well. I wanted to compare what the UK was like for terrorist attacks versus what France was like versus what Germany was like versus what Cyprus was like. Because if you want to get a feel for how safe a country is, we should probably look at terrorism as well. So In the UK, I don't know if this number's accurate. I've got to be honest. I don't recall there being 1,200 terrorist attacks. So that I would dispute personally. Whether it's attempted attacks, don't know. I know that these security services foil way more than makes it into the press. I know that for a fact, but I dispute this number. I don't know if there's been that many. So we're going to ignore that number for the purpose of this. What we are going to look at, though, is the verified attacks. Now, I've chosen a date range, just the last 26 years. So basically anything from the year 2000 to this year. In the UK, you had the 7/7 London bombings. I remember that. You had the airport attack in Glasgow. I remember that. The murder of Lee Rigby. I remember that. Then you got the attack on Westminster Bridge. I remember that. The Manchester bombing. You've got the London Bridge attack again, which was kind of all part of the same thing. You've got this Finsbury Park van attack. Then you've got the Parsons Green train bombing. You've got this stabbing in Streatham? Oh no, somebody from there is going to be unhappy that I've butchered the name. But anyway, Reading Park stabbings, right? You've got the murder of the MP. Now, I don't know if that one, I don't remember that one, but anyway, apparently it's happened. You've got these here, right? Again, there's a lot of things going on in the UK over the last 26 years. France, I don't know if it's 500 plus, I don't know if they've been foiled, but let's look at the ones that we do remember. So there was these shootings here. You've got the Charlie Hebdo offices. I remember that. That was like when ISIS were prevalent. You'd got this supermarket siege. You'd got the Bataclan. That was huge in Paris. You know, so you've got all of these different attacks that happened. The Nice Promenade. I remember that one. I remember that happening and seeing it on the news. So you've got all of these different terrorist attacks happening in France. Yeah, I'm not going to read them all out. You can see them on the screen. And then we go to Germany. Again, a bit less. Frankfurt Airport, people being shot. You've got the train machete attacks. You've got the wine bar suicide bombings, the Christmas markets. I remember these. You've got a whole bunch of things happening, right? A lot of the Christmas markets, people being run over, people being killed indiscriminately for whatever reason, right? And then we get to Cyprus. 0. Now, 0 successful terrorist attacks. There have been attempts. So I remember these because these were coming up in the news, at least the last two, because I was here when it happened. This one I don't know about, but apparently there was a plot targeting Israelis in 2021. Don't know about that one, but it never happened. It was preemptive. They foiled it. These ones I was hearing about because, I feel like I'm going to sneeze 1 second. Don't want to sneeze down the mic. Okay, right. So these ones, it was at the time you'd got the whole Israel and Palestine conflict, and I know that's still all ongoing, but you know, there was a plot to then target Israelis in Cyprus, which again was foiled. But the point is, in the UK, in France, in Germany, terrorism is a thing. And when people go, is a country safe? Now, you know, the chances of you being killed by a terrorist attack is still slim in the UK. But the point is, when people look at Cyprus and they go, Cyprus is dangerous because it's in the Middle East, it's not. Like, it's just not. Let me come back to me, right? When you're looking at how safe a country is, I try and take everything into account. You know, if I was going to go live in America, I'd be looking at the gun crime in schools and I'd be thinking about all that kind of thing. You know, I'd be looking at all the mass shootings that, you know, hundreds of them that just take place every day. It's not just about conflict. It's not just about crime. It's kind of the whole lifestyle together. Now, I want to come on to war because there's the regional conflict and there's the war risk. And there absolutely is that risk, right? When we were looking to move to Cyprus, I was looking at the peace index because one of our criteria for moving to a country was we wanted somewhere that was safe. We wanted somewhere that was lower crime. And if you look at the crime index, Cyprus has one of the lowest crime rates in the EU. But if you look at the peace index, it's actually not very peaceful at all. So what's the difference? And should you be concerned about it? Well, the peace index is talking about societal safety and security. So it's looking at the crime levels, it's looking at the violence, political stability, policing, things like that. But it also takes into account ongoing conflict, internal conflict, external tensions, you know, involvement in wars, any relations with neighbors and that kind of thing. And then it takes into account the militarization. So you're looking at like the spending, you're looking at troop levels, weapons imports and stuff like that. So it takes in all of that into account. Now, the thing is, Cyprus is low on this index. And if you were to just look at this and go, oh, Cyprus isn't a very peaceful country, it can't be because it's in the Middle East. And, let's be honest, the Middle East has been a mess for years. Maybe we shouldn't go. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, oh, I don't know, don't want to go to Cyprus. Well, look, Cyprus politically is in the EU, yes, but geographically it is in the Middle East. And you are surrounded by a world of pain. Okay. Now, I just want to come on to this because if I just come back to this for a second, for those of you that don't know, and most Europeans will, but I know people watching in America don't always know where Cyprus is. So I've started out here. You've got the UK here, and you've got Europe all around here. And then for the most part, you've got the Middle East here. You've got Syria, you've got Iraq, you've got everything else going on here. You've got Iran, where the conflict is at the moment. And this little island here is where you've got Cyprus. So I'm going to zoom into Cyprus just a little bit. When you look at the conflict, and you look at the wars that have happened in recent times, you look at any kind of terrorism, that stems from, let's call it is the Middle East. You've got the Iraqi war, you had Syria, you got ISIS when that was kicking all off. It's all around here, right? You've then got all of this here, right? Where, Palestine and the Gaza Strip, all of that conflict that's been happening is still happening. When the rockets were firing, I didn't see them personally, but there was news articles where you could see them from Limassol. So people in Limassol, you could see the rockets firing. That's how close you are to the conflict. So when you look at Cyprus on a map and you go, holy crap, it's surrounded by a world of pain because, let's be honest, the Middle East has been unstable for a long time, for various reasons, which I'm not going to go into tonight, but it's not a stable place. And when you look at where Cyprus is compared to the rest of Europe, you go, oh, it's a bit close, which is why I say geographically, it's the Middle East. It's why the climate's so nice. But politically, it's classed as the EU. Now, one thing I will say is if you've been watching the news today, you'll have heard that Iran have fired rockets in the direction of Cyprus. We've had lots of people messaging us from the UK, people messaging us from Poland, asking if we're okay. Now, while I do appreciate that, for everybody that has reached out, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. You're reading and you're watching the news, and the news is massively skewed because for a couple of reasons. One, apparently, in one of the articles I read, apparently Cyprus has been bombed today. Apparently, the tourist areas have been hit by missile strikes. They haven't. As to my knowledge, they have not. I don't know anybody that is attacked in Cyprus at the moment, right? But the English news, the foreign news, because Iran has fired missiles in the direction of Cyprus, apparently Cyprus is being attacked. Now, you look at where Iran is on here, right? If you're firing a missile in the direction of Cyprus, you're also firing a missile in the direction of Greece, in the direction of Italy, in the direction of France. Why are they not talking about that? Okay. Yes, there's a British base on Cyprus, then that comes into the question. But just because they fired it in the direction of Cyprus, it didn't mean anything. I mean, it makes a great headline, it sells newspapers, but it doesn't mean anything. They were attacking the UAE. They've been attacking Dubai, right? So from Iran, if you're firing missiles in the direction of Dubai, well, then maybe Australia is not safe. Honestly, like people are blowing it all out of proportion. Now, it's not to say that Cyprus won't get hit. It may get hit. But the point is, Cyprus has been surrounded by this for hundreds of years. I'm not going to give you a history lesson on this tonight, right? This is the whole point of this isn't to be a history lesson, but everybody needs to appreciate that because of the location of Cyprus. In fact, sorry, let me come back to this again. Because of the location of Cyprus, over the years, everybody's kind of wanted a bit of Cyprus because of look at where it is in the Middle East. It's an amazing hub. This basically becomes a strategic outpost in the Middle East. You've got the Suez Canal just here. So you can guard it because let's be honest, if the Middle East wanted to disrupt trade to the West, what are you going to do? You're going to block this Suez Canal. So by being able to have Cyprus under your control, you get to control the canal. And if you can control the canal, then you can control world trade to an extent. I'm not going to go into all the politics. People might even argue that point. But the point I'm trying to make is that Cyprus has always been a place where people have wanted to get to. People have always tried to kind of take it and conquer it. And, you've had lots of people over the years. So like, at the turn of what would you call it? not 21st century, I would be like the 1100s. You've got the Knights Templars that were there, right? You've got, oh, blimey, there was like the Republic of Venice, I think, was there. You'd got the Ottoman Empire in the 1500s that came. Then you got the British Empire that came up until about 1960, and then basically gave it to Cyprus. Or again, I don't know the politics, so somebody's going to shoot me down for this, I'm sure, but that's fine. Basically, it was the British Empire for a while, which is why it has lots of British laws and everything else. British Empire then gave it up to the Republic of Cyprus. It's gone through a lot of change over the years, and the last real conflict on the island, and I'm not belittling this at all, but the last real conflict on the island was in 1974 when the war happened between the North and the South. I think it was 1974. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was about 1974 when the war happened between the North and the South and when the Turks invaded, and there was the whole war. Now, I'm not going into the reasons of that. I might do another video on this actually, because I've heard both sides of the story and I've got some interesting stories from people that are local. That's not what tonight's about. The point is, that was the last real conflict on the island. And so when people are talking about the risk in Cyprus, people are thinking, bloody hell, bombs are falling, missiles are coming in. But the most realistic disruption we've seen, or the most realistic kind of turmoil we've seen, is flights disruption. Travel advisories, regional escalation happens, and yes, there's a knock-on effect, but nothing's really happened since 1974, right? Before 1974, I did a bit of research on this. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there was an actual invasion since the 1500s when the Ottoman Empire came along, right? So even in World War II, Cyprus didn't get invaded. Yes, there were air raids, but no troops ever hit the ground. So Cyprus, having a British sovereign base on the island, yes, it sits close to the Middle East, but for me, it feels really safe. Whenever we've been here, it feels safe. And the thing is, yes, it's closer to the world, closer to the action, let's say, closer to the conflict than it would be if you were sat in the UK. The point I'm trying to make is, because of all of that, you look at statistics. Statistically, if nothing's happened since the 70s, and that was the conflict between the Turks and the Greeks, or the North and the South, right? The chances of something happening are still remote, still small. There is a chance. There is absolutely a chance, because if the UK follows the US into the war blindly, then all of a sudden we get dragged into it, and then the UK becomes a target. And yes, you've got UK interests on the islands, then the island becomes a target. It could happen. It absolutely could happen. But it probably won't. And I think the reality is, you're more likely to be stabbed in the UK than I am to have a rocket land on my house in Cyprus. So, in summary, day to day, I feel safer here. I'm not worried about my son dying when he goes out on his own. Not worried about my wife walking home, going out with friends. I sleep better. I worry less living here in Cyprus. Because, let's be honest, real safety is not all about statistics. It's how you feel when the people you love walk out the door. And I'm not worried here. I'm not stressed at all, right? Here in Cyprus, I feel calmer. I'm less on edge. My family has space to live and not just survive. So for me, if safety means peace of mind, then every single day of the week, Cyprus wins. I'm not worried. And you shouldn't be either. That's Cyprus Unfiltered. Hope you've enjoyed it. I've gone on a little bit tonight, but we're going to move over to questions in just a second. What I will say, though, is if you found this useful, then as always, please give it a like and share, because when I looked to move to Cyprus 3 years ago, this type of content didn't exist. Nobody was talking about it. And so what I'm trying to do is just show what real life is really like here in Cyprus and document it for the rest of us. So my only ask is, look, if you're finding this interesting, if you're finding it useful, please share it with people. Certainly right now, people are worried about Cyprus. People are concerned. I'm seeing posts on Facebook right now, people being worried that they're coming in on holiday, and there's, just if you think somebody can benefit from hearing this, please give it a share, And if you're not subscribed already, then it'd be awesome if you could subscribe, give it a like as well, all of that good stuff. And look, we are going to move over to the questions. I'm going to bring it back to me. I'm going to move over to the questions, and there seems to be quite a lot going on in the chat tonight, so I'm going to see what we've got. But like I say, hopefully you guys have found that useful. What have we got? So we've got, let me go to the top. Good evening, Mark from Shropshire. Steve. Hey, Steve. Thanks very much for joining. Good to have you on. Hello from Scotland. Evelina, thanks very much for joining. We've got Ferry Monica. Good evening from the UK. Yeah, you guys have got back okay. Good to have you on. I've got Matthew, evening Mark from the UK. Thanks very much. Is there anybody not from the UK watching tonight, by the way? Be interested to see if there's anybody not from the UK. Not that there's a problem with the UK. Obviously, I like speaking to you guys, but I'm just always interested to see where people are from. Who else we got? We've got, I'm a father-in-law tonight. Hello. We've got a lot of worried people watching. Chesh Tato. I'm a mother-in-law as well. Chesh Mamo. What else we got? Michael Cummings. Good evening, Mark. Thank you very much. Cool. Right. From Jackie Mazar. Cyprus isn't actually a member of NATO. It's the only EU member state that doesn't participate in NATO. It's because of the territorial division with the North that prevents the opportunity to join. Oh, okay. Right. So maybe I misspoke, but in my head, I'm thinking we've got the British base here and Britain's part of NATO. And I always think if something kicks off on the island, it's going to be because of Britain and Britain's part of NATO. So yeah, maybe I misspoke earlier, but yeah, you're right. But yeah, thanks for calling that out. Much appreciated. Cheers, Jackie. And also what it does have is the Iron Dome system created by Israel. So that's protective, can't even speak. So from that perspective, it makes it pretty safe. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know we had that here. That's interesting. Well, thanks for pointing that out. See, I feel even safer now than I did before I made this video. We've got Evelina again. I don't have Facebook and I don't plan to have it when I move there in July. Okay, you don't have a is that what you mean? You don't have a Facebook? So, okay, fine. As in you don't have a Facebook account, I assume. We've got Chris saying Nicosia since 2021. Not sure what that's in relation to, Chris. Do you want to just give us a bit more info? Do you live in Nicosia or don't know what that means, but maybe it's something I said earlier and I can't remember what it was in relation to. Right, sorry, I'm distracting myself over there. Who else have we got? Correct about the serious crimes. Oh, thanks, Chris. Cheers. Much appreciated. Railway History UK, most sensible assessment I've heard of the situation, Mark. Thanks very much. Much appreciated. Chris again, British colonized Cyprus. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, as a British person, my ancestors on the island, that's what they did. They went around the world and tried to colonize everywhere. So apologies if you're Cypriot and watching this. But yeah, you're right. They tried to do everything. But because of that, if you are British, it does mean that you can drive on the same side of the road as in the UK. You've got 3-pin plugs like in the UK, and the legal system and a lot of the rules and laws out here are similar to the UK for that reason. But yeah, I've actually heard some. Actually, I will just talk on this. So I've spoke to a few people, and I try not to get involved in the politics between the North and the South because I can have an opinion on it. Like everybody's got an opinion, right? But I've not lived through it. I just look at it and go, I'm a stats guy. And if the whole world thinks the North is occupied and therefore not a real country, and the South is the Republic of Cyprus, and that is recognized by the rest of the world, and only one country recognizes the North, and that happens to be the country that invaded it. I mean, I'm going to side with the rest of the world just on stats, and that's just me looking at data. But I understand there's a whole reason, there's a whole kind of series and a whole waft of implications that caused it on the run up to it, what's right and wrong, you know. But one of the things I did hear back end of last year, and this is very interesting to hear the Cypriots' take on it. And I've heard two stories. And so if anybody's got an opinion on this, feel free to put it into the comments. I don't want to make this a political thing, but I've heard both sides. I've heard that if the British remained in power, that it would never have happened. And I've also heard that if the British hadn't done what they did, then it also, basically the British screwed it up and it's the British fault. So you hear both sides. You hear some that praise the British going, if only you'd have stayed, it would have been like Singapore. And we've heard because you were there, it screwed it up in the first place. So I don't know. It's you get both sides of it. But what I will say on that is that, you know, in terms of like racism or anything like that, I've never experienced anything from anybody. So just in case anybody was worrying, I haven't talked about racism tonight or anything like that. But irrespective of people's opinions on the British, I always feel safe here and I always feel welcome here and nobody's giving me a hard time. And it's always, I'm the sort of person that I have an opinion, you have an opinion, right? Now, I'm always open to learning new things. So just because I have an opinion doesn't mean that I don't respect your opinion. And it also doesn't mean that I can't learn something from your opinion. You might have a perspective on things that I've never thought of. So generally, I'm quite open. And it's interesting, when I've been sat with a Cypriot guy who's telling me that the British are the cause of the problem, I'm going, okay, cool. I've never looked at it like that before. And I try and take things on board. So anyway, yeah, the British did colonize Cyprus. Sorry, that's me waffling on again. But yeah, the British did colonize Cyprus. Evelina, thanks, Mark. Thanks for sharing with us your story. Yeah, no problem at all. That's what I'm here for. Like I say, I want to share stories, and like I say, I want to make it real. Michael Cummings, all too easy to get wrapped up in a state of sensationalism. Good to get a more pragmatic view. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Michael. We've got Chris Jarrett from Germany. Hey, Chris, good to have you on. Jackie Mazer, yes, the Cypriots purchased the system and it's been up and running since July last year, apparently. Okay, that's the is it like the Patriot missile system or something like that? It's, yeah, I know what you mean, like the Iron Curtain thing, but I didn't know the Cypriots had bought it, so that's good to know. From Lee Clark, good to have you on, Lee, and hey, Lou, if you're on as well. Great, Mark. Lots of people seem to be choosing either Dubai or Cyprus for better tax savings and lifestyle. Given this weekend's actions, Cyprus is a much safer option. Lee and Lou. Yeah, thanks, Lee and Lou. I mean, I'll be honest, like I'm in a lot of property groups in the UK, and a lot of people are abandoning the UK for Cyprus because of tax and everything else. And it's a real shame right now because, and you always get people like this, and there's probably going to be people in my comments at some point just being nasty for the point of being nasty, and that's fine. People are always like that. But I'm seeing comments and posts from people in the UK, and they're all laughing at people that moved out to Dubai, going, "Oh yeah, can you leave your phone on your car now? You can leave your phone on your car, but you can't go and you're getting bombed and all." And it's just, come on, guys, it's a flipping war. It's just freaking horrible. Is Dubai safer than Cyprus? Again, it comes down to when was the last time Dubai was attacked? Yes, it's happening right now. Could it happen again? Could do. But for the most people, this will probably at some point blow over and Dubai will go back to being safe. And crime is low there. If you're taking this one incident, yeah, it's terrible. But then if you look at the terror attacks in the UK, then the UK can be terrible. So it's isolated. Could it go bigger? Yeah, it could. But for me, when I look at safety and everything else as well, and I don't want to bring religion into this, but I kind of have to at the moment. If you're going to an Arab country and you're going to be in a Muslim country and you've got Sharia law and everything else, it's going to be different anyway. The laws and the crime and everything is different anyway. And sometimes the punishments are disproportionate to the crime, but then that keeps the crime rate low. But then you've got the way of life to consider. So just because it does have, typically, if you ignore the missiles hitting Dubai today, just because you've got a low crime rate doesn't necessarily mean it's a good place for everybody. So I think personally, out of the two, Cyprus has always been my favorite. I like Dubai. I do like Dubai. I've been there as a tourist and I loved it. But I didn't choose to live there because actually, culturally, Cyprus is a better fit. We've got Sakoba. I was in the UK till Wednesday. Now I'm in Coral Bay, the crime hotspot. Stephen, yeah. So, I mean, look, Coral Bay, it is a crime hotspot. And I didn't want to live there. Now, again, if you were to search Coral Bay, you'll have lots of people that have gone to Coral Bay and not had an issue. But you think about it, it's where the tourists are mainly going. So you've got loads of Airbnbs. So you have people that are looking at the Airbnbs, looking to capitalize on the fact that people are rocking up, they've got everything packed nicely in their suitcase, and then maybe they drop it off and they go straight out for dinner. It's dead easy to come in and nick a whole case of stuff, right? Because it's all packed up. You've done the bloody work for them. If you go down to the beach, you'll have pickpockets on the beach because people will leave their valuables on the sun loungers while they go off for a swim, thinking it'll all be okay. But the problem is, it's really easy when you're in that situation to just assume that somebody else will stop. But most people aren't looking out for you. Let's be honest. If you're laying on a sun lounger next to somebody and you see somebody come and take something and walk away, most people don't challenge that person. They're not going to run after somebody who has stolen something from somebody they don't know to try and get something back and risk being attacked, right? In Cyprus, you're less likely to be attacked. And I didn't mention this earlier, but like the burglaries and stuff like that, the things that happen in Coral Bay, because it's opportunistic, you're not getting people that are just being attacked for like petty stuff. The crime, if you're going to get robbed very rarely, and it does happen, but very rarely is there violence associated with that crime. They're opportunistic. They try and steal it. They don't want conflict, which is why it kind of falls into that petty crime category. There is serious crime out here for sure. But the chances of you being a victim of it, you're more likely to be hit by petty crime and opportunistic people. So if you just come and you don't have your tourist hat on, you can probably live safely in Coral Bay. I'm sure there's lots of people that have lived in Coral Bay for years, never had an issue. The problem is because it's a tourist hotspot, it becomes a crime hotspot. Richard Davies, great video. Fully agree with your opinions after living there for 1 year. Nice one. Thanks, Richard. Where did you live out of interest? Whereabouts in Cyprus were you living? Simon, do some local restaurants try to sneak extras onto bills, hoping unsuspecting tourists won't notice? That happened to us. I'm still unsure if that was a genuine mistake or them trying to rip us off. That's a good question. Can't think of. Have we had anybody trying to sneak anything on? I don't recall anything like that. What I do find, and this isn't crime, this is just like business, is that when you're in the tourist areas, you get less for free. Now, what do I mean by that? If you're going to a restaurant and you're on the seafront in Paphos, you will get what you pay for the most part. And for most people, that's fine. When you start eating in the Cypriot areas and the less touristy areas, what you then get is the Cypriot hospitality. And they are very generous people. They are very welcoming for your business and everything else. And so you'll sit down and quite often they'll bring you like breads out and things like that. And then you're eating, they'll bring you desserts out, they'll bring you free alcohol out at the end. Like when you go to the Cypriot places, when you move away from the tourist areas, they'll bring you a lot more for free just out of hospitality. But on the tourists, on the seafront, they don't need to because they've just got this constant churn of people that are arriving for 1 or 2 weeks. So I wouldn't say they're getting ripped off. But in your scenario, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you absolutely could do. There's 2 things I'm going to say is if anybody else has got any examples of that, please put it in the chat because we can have a chat about it. But also, if my wife is watching tonight, have we experienced? So I can't think of any times where we've been ripped off or where I feel like they've tried to take the mick. And I'm even thinking like car washes now. I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything. It's going to annoy me. I'm going to hang up from you guys and then I'm going to think of like 10 things. I'm like, oh, I should have said that. Yeah. Asher, if you're watching and there's anything that we're missing or anything I'm thinking or forgotten, no, I'm not thinking about, let everybody know in the comments. Where did we get to? So Simon, yes. So out of interest, what happened, Simon? I'd be interested to know what actually happened. What did they try and put on the bill? Was it additional tip or was it they just tried to bill you for something that you hadn't had or what was it? In fact, actually, just on that front, before I move on to the next comments and while we're waiting for other people to respond, when I've been in a bar, it's quite often, certainly in Tyler, certainly, in like Casanegra and those sort of areas, if I'm pronouncing that right, you'll go into a bar. Now, you imagine you go out on a Friday night, on a Saturday night in the UK, and you order a drink, you order some beers, you get charged, you pay, you can't, very rarely do you set up a tab, but generally you get charged for your beer and you pay for it on the spot. I've been out a few times recently. In fact, Lou, we experienced this, didn't we? And I was also out a couple of weeks prior to that, where you're just out, you're drinking, and they just top up a tab. Now, in the UK, they'd be too fearful of that because people would probably just walk off without paying. Because unfortunately, you do get that in the UK. A lot of people will just walk off and try not to pay. Here, they were very trusting. So it was actually the total opposite. They just assume you're just there to have a good time and you're going to pay the bill before you go, and that's all fine. So again, I'd not really had much negative or any negative experiences like that really that I can think of. I'm jumping down the comments just because I can see my wife's replied, I can't think of anything. No. So I don't think we've experienced it. But if I do, I'll let you know. There'll be another Cyprus Unfiltered video where I'm ranting and raving. Okay. So yeah, that was Simon. So Premium 2477. Hi Mark, how do you find running a business in the UK while living in Cyprus? Well, for me, it's been, say, easy. So I have two businesses in the UK. One is it's a UK entity where I run my IT work through. So if I'm working for UK clients, then my UK company invoices that company. It's very easy. I just work remotely, but I'm invoicing through my UK company. We also have a property company, which for the last 2.5, 3 years since we moved out here, we've been running remotely, where we can do a lot of the operations remotely, but we have a man on the ground in the UK, and we're in the process. So that man on the ground is my brother, and he joined the business a couple of years back before we left the country. And for anything that you need in the property business where it's boots on the ground, he does. The majority of the remote work we could do ourselves, as in all of the viewings, you could do remote viewings. There's lots of processes that you can automate. So we've been able to automate a lot of that. We've been able to do it remotely. But there will always be an instance in that business where you need boots on the ground. Depends what business you're looking to run. If you're looking to run a shop, you're going to struggle to do that remotely. If you're looking to run a services company and you can offer that service remotely, you're going to have a lot easier time. There is then the tax to think about. So if you've got a UK company, or you've got UK companies, and you're thinking about tax, you will end up needing to pay, more than likely, your tax on your corporation tax in the UK. So any profit that you make in the UK, you will be taxed, or your company is taxed in the UK. But your dividends, if you're a non-dom resident and you're living out here in Cyprus, you can take dividends from that company in the same way you would from a Cypriot company, and those dividends are 0% tax. You pay 2.65% GESI up to the value of about 180,000 euros, where you're capped. But your dividends from a company in the UK, they are 0% for the first 17 years as a non-dom resident. If you're not non-dom, they've just changed the tax thresholds this year in 2026. This is Cyprus now, where previously you'd pay a lot more tax. You'd pay the special defense tax on your dividends. And I don't know if they've removed that or if they've just changed it, but basically, if you're a non-dom resident now, you would have to pay 5% on your dividends, which is still way less than the UK. So if you're not a non-dom, if you're not a non-dom, you'd pay you 5% plus 2.65% GESI. Everybody pays GESI. Whether you can draw from GESI or not, you still pay it. And it would be 5% if you're not non-dom. If you are a non-dom resident for the first 17 years, you'd pay 0% tax. So if you're drawing dividends from the UK, it would be, depending on where you fall into in that cycle, in that scenario, sorry. Hopefully that answers the question anyway, but feel free to ask some more if you've got something more specific. Railway History UK. My partner was verbally harassed about being British whilst waiting for me in Paphos General after I was 999 there 2 years ago. Quite hostile. Oh, okay. That's interesting. I mean, it's not crime free. People are more than likely going to have experiences like that. I'm just one guy. I'm one guy talking to you guys on the internet. I can share with you my experiences and I can share with you my point of view. Clearly, there's going to be people that have experienced racism. There will be people that have been mugged, probably. But what I'm saying is, it's rarer. Interesting that you get that hostility as a British person. I'm really trying to think. I don't think I've ever experienced that. Like I say, even when people were saying it was the British fault for the North and the South issue, I didn't feel hostility then. It was just we're just having a conversation. It was just two grown-up people having a conversation and learning about each other's point of view. Asha, have we had any situations like that? Have we had any situations like that where people have been hostile to us? I can't think of any. Again, I can't think of any, but it's interesting. So thanks for sharing your experience. Clearly it does happen. Where did I get to? Okay, from Lee again. So, assuming drugs and prostitution is not a large issue in Cyprus, which probably helps keep crime rates lower. Well, yeah, I mean, I've never gone looking for prostitutes. I don't think there's any prostitution in Cyprus. Not that I've seen. There might be like a prostitution underworld that I don't know. I haven't seen any. What I will say though about the drugs, and this is one thing I do notice when I come back to the UK, is you forget what weed smells like. when I come back to the UK, the amount of times I can be walking around and you can walk past somebody in the supermarket, you can walk past somebody in a hotel, you can be driving behind a car on a motorway and they're smoking weed in the car in front and you can just smell it. The amount of times I smell weed in the UK when I go back is ridiculous. And when I say you forget what it smells like is because I could probably count on one hand in nearly 3 years the amount of times I've smelt weed in Cyprus. So you don't see, or if people are smoking it, they're not smoking it out on the street corners. They're not smoking it in the parks. You know, when my kids are playing in the park, my son's in the park with his friends, they're not smoking drugs in the park in public spaces. So if, and there will be drugs, of course there's drugs, you know, the serious crime is related to drugs a lot of the time. But if there are drugs, it's not in your face. You know, I'm not seeing it. I'm not smelling it. That's the other thing. Like, I'm not smelling it. So, you know, is there prostitution? Probably, if you know where to look. Are there drugs? Probably, if you know where to buy them. But it's not in your face. You know, like it's just not in your face. Like it's well, it's not in your nose. Yeah, it's not in your face in the UK, but it's not in your nose. Hang on a minute. We've got lots of questions coming through now. Let me go back up. You guys are moving my chat. Oh, I've lost where I am now. Okay, from Tangible Nomad. The biggest doubts my wife has about moving to Cyprus is its proximity to the Middle East and the tsunamis. I watched your snakes and spiders this week, though, and haven't told her about the tarantulas. Okay, right. Let's go. Let's yeah, we can make this a little bit interactive. So for Tangible Nomad, I'm assuming your wife isn't watching right now because otherwise she's just learned that there are tarantulas in Cyprus, really big ones that you have to catch in an ice cream tub. And I don't know what would happen if you splatted one. I don't normally kill spiders. I just catch them and kind of release them into the neighbor's garden or something. You know, I don't generally kill them. But if you squashed a tarantula, it's going to make a mess. Like I say, just don't tell her about them. But if she's watching, she knows about them now. But let me go on to, there was two of the tabs. Never mind. Don't need to talk about the other tabs now. I got two of the tabs that I was going to show you guys, but it's fine because I kind of voiced over them. So that's fine. What do I want to go to? I want to go to, where is it? There we go. Right. Earthquakes. Let's have a look at this. I'm going to show you guys something. Earthquakes. Cyprus. There was an earthquake the other day, by the way. For anybody that was interested, I think it was a magnitude of 3.4 or something like that. But again, the whole room shakes and everything, and you do get earthquakes in Cyprus. Let me go to let me move to this. Right, let's just have a look in here. So latest, there you go, 2.3. There was an earthquake 14 hours ago. Apparently, didn't feel that one. Yeah, that's the one we felt 4 days ago. Definitely felt that one. And when you feel an earthquake, that's interesting. So the reason why I'm showing you this is because actually, you know, Cyprus does have earthquakes. Oh, what? No, just, I'm not really your target audience. To the men over 50 who haven't exercised in years, well, I'm 43, go away. I'm going gym tomorrow, leave me alone. Right. Okay. That was the 4 days ago one. So it originated off there. There was some big ones back end of last year. And if I come down on here, you'll generally see, if I go, can I filter by? No, let's just do all of them. Well, I did 100. Let's do all of them. See what comes up. Because there were some big ones last year. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this, I am going to answer the question in a minute or answer the concern. I don't want to show less. I want to show all of them. Okay, well, anyway, let's go 3 plus. Come on. What am I doing wrong? All. Is this filtered button out? It's going to be the date. I don't want the last 7 days. I want the last. Let's go. That's the last year. Let's do that. It really doesn't help me, does it? I'm trying to. I wasn't prepared to speak about earthquakes tonight. But the point is, hang on a minute. Here we go. Right, 2025. That's the one. That one. Yes. Let's go there. We can look at this. Seriously, they've really got to sort their marketing out. I am not your target audience. That's not what I want to show you, though. Okay. This is all rubbish. Well, it's not rubbish, but anyway, the point is, right, let me go to the maps. So, yes, you do get earthquakes in Cyprus, and Cyprus is on a fault line, I believe. At least the fault line is near us. And actually, for those of you interested, if you come down to Korean, you've got this archaeological site here. We're going historic tonight. You've got the archaeological sites here, and you've got a museum, which is somewhere here. It's all tied in with the archaeological site. And look at that. It's in the UK because you're actually in the UK in that sovereign territory that we talked about earlier. But anyway, so you come here and there is an earthquake house. And this whole area, if I go to this whole site is an archaeological site. There is an earthquake house somewhere, and it's actually called the Earthquake House, or at least it was when we were there. House of the Gladiators. Anyway, the point is, these houses were destroyed by earthquakes, and there was like a whole village that kind of went underneath. And it's a really interesting trip if you want to go and have a look and learn about Cyprus and what it was like thousands of years ago. It's interesting. So I would highly recommend that. But anyway, the point is, you do get a lot of earthquakes. Now, earthquakes in the modern day, the houses are all built to withstand them. And the earthquakes, we've had I think it was a 4.8 or a 4.9, and literally the whole room moved. Like our wardrobes, it warped, and it lasted for about 10 seconds. It was, well, surreal. You don't get used to it, but when you've experienced a couple of earthquakes, you just go, oh, it's an earthquake. It is what it is. But the point is, I don't believe we've ever had any tsunamis whatsoever. So I'm trying to put somebody's mind at rest here and might be making it worse. But the point is, I don't know of any tsunamis that have ever hit. When the one hit over here it was like Sri Lanka and everything here. I mean, there was a massive earthquake here and it went all round, and all of this got kind of, Sri Lanka got it the worst and Malaysia got a little bit, and, kind of it hit really hard over here. And I think it was up over this way, like Phuket and everywhere, I think. But the point is, it was like a much bigger mass of water. And while you do get earthquakes here, I've not known them to be that big in recent times. So is there a risk of tsunamis? I actually don't know, but I'm not worried about it. What I did check, interestingly, for those that are worried, so where we are, so we're in Tala, we used to live over here. Now, the difference between here and here, just here, right by the sea, we were 40 meters or 45 meters or something like that elevation. So we were 40 meters high from sea level. And if you look at tsunamis, if you are scared of tsunamis, if you looked at the tsunamis that hit Sri Lanka and everywhere else, even though they came really far inland, above it was about 35 or 40 meters in terms of height, you were safe anyway. So you could literally be like a stone's throw away from the sea and still be relatively safe. In Tala, you're about 160 meters above sea level, because if I go to the train view, we're going all over the place tonight. Look at the train view. It's quite hilly. So if you're anywhere up here, even though you're right near the coast, you're not going to get hit by the tsunamis anyway, because like I say, the biggest ones on record only go a certain height. And so I wouldn't worry about tsunamis. I'm less worried about tsunamis than I am about the war, and I'm not worried about the war. Hopefully that helps. Okay, what have we got next? We've got Railway History UK. Never had anything added, but plenty of freebies of restaurants. Yeah, no, exactly right. Cypriot hospitality is amazing, and I love it. And genuinely, I think I said this last week, one of the things I miss when I go back to the UK is the Cypriot food. And, paired with that is the Cypriot hospitality. When you go to a pub in the UK, you're generally greeted by somebody who's been paid nearly minimum wage or minimum wage, and they're doing the job. And for the most part, they're not family owned, and therefore the service that you feel like you're receiving when you're in the UK is worse, and the quality of the food is worse. And so I love it out here personally. I love the food. I love the hospitality, and even on the touristy areas, people are friendly. I've not had any real bad experiences. Evelina, your wife is like my husband who hates snakes. Well, to be fair, my wife wasn't. I mean, I don't know. Asher, are you scared of snakes? I don't think you are. I mean, we've seen them out the window, and she's seen more than I have, and I've never come across scared. But she didn't like. Got to be honest, she didn't like the tarantulas. I have to deal with them. But I'm a man, so of course I do. But yeah, I mean, tarantulas in the cupboard, that's one thing. Tarantulas in the kitchen is another thing. Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, it's a way of life. You're more likely to see a tarantula than you are to have a rocket hit your house. That's how safe Cyprus is. There you go. I can't think of anything. So Lee, I got told I got told by a cashier to put back 3 bottles of water as it was cheaper to buy 6-pack. Plus, both meals out, we had free fruit and drink at the end of the meal, plus better food at half the price. Yeah, I agree, Lee. I absolutely agree. And we were talking about this, weren't we? Because it's not just that. I remember, so I mean, that's fine in restaurants, and everything you've said is accurate. For those of you that know, like B&Q in the UK. So out in Cyprus, you've got two main shops in Paphos, which are bigger and kind of like a chain. You've got Super Home Centre and you have Home Market DIY. And we were in Home Market DIY. This is in Paphos. It's right near ISOP, for those of you wondering. And we were buying some stuff. I can't remember what we were buying. We're buying some stuff. And it was before I'd sorted out like Wise and Revolut and stuff like that. And I was still using, I think it was like Bank of Cyprus when we first arrived. And I was paying for stuff in cash. I can't remember what we bought, but it was, I'm going to make up the numbers now, but the principle is the same. We were buying a few things, and let's just say it was, I don't know, 15 euros, right? Or sorry, let's say it was like 15. I'm making this up, but like I say, the story has the same sentiment. Let's say the bill was like 16 euros 50. I had 15 euros in cash, or whatever amount I had and whatever the bill was, but I had just less in cash. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, okay, so I only had 15 euros in cash. The bill was like 16.50 or whatever it was. And I was like, okay, cool. Do you take card? Like, clearly they do, it's a shop. But I was like, can I pay card instead? And they were like, how much have you got? And I was like, I've got 15 euros. And they was like, oh, just call it 15 euros. Like, what? No, well, I need to pay you the full amount. It's like, no, just call it 15 euros. That was in a freaking shop. That you would never go into B&Q in the UK and the person behind the till goes, we'll just round it down. It's fine. It doesn't happen. Again, like, I'm not saying everywhere will do this, but I've never experienced that in the UK. I have experienced it here. So, for me, Cyprus wins again. Simon, the bill came. Oh, wow. Hang on a minute. Oh, that's not cool. My mouse. Oh, there we go. We're back. Right. My mouse jumped down to my iPad down here. I don't want it to do that because I can't control this then. Right. Where do I get to? The bill came. So from Simon, the bill came. I looked at it and noticed about 3 extra meals on top of the exact meals we ordered. Oh, wow. Okay. When I looked up at the waiter across the room, he uttered mistake before I even said a word. Oh, okay. Interesting. And you've also said the waiter was the other side of the room when I checked the receipt, but he was quick to react when it was obvious I'd seen something shouldn't be on the bill. Okay, that's a shame. Yeah, I'm not experienced that at all. Ash saying, I guess the only situation was the first time we were getting up the internet and the guy wanted to sell you the premium modem. Yes, for those of you that saw my internet video, this was JTech in Paya. And I work in IT. I've worked in IT for the last 20 years. And amongst other things, we're doing property and everything as well. But predominantly I work in IT. And I know about networks. I'm not a network engineer, but I know about networks. I know enough. Yeah, I know enough not to have the wall pulled over my eyes in most scenarios. And they were trying to sell me the premium router. Now, bear in mind, the bog standard router, there was like 70 euros or something that you had to take. You had to take their router. 70 euros. The same one on Amazon in the UK was about 25 pounds. Anyway, you end up being fleeced because you go with these guys. So you pay you 70 euros for this router. But they tried to flog me a premium router for 150 euros, which that router on Amazon was about 60 pounds. But they were trying to charge me 150 euros for the same thing. And they were branding it as premium. They're branding it as high speed. Now, I don't know if that was naivety, because this guy who sold internet and tech for a living had never heard of Starlink. So maybe for him it was premium. Maybe for him it was high speed. And generally what you'll find out in Cyprus is that if you're looking at some of the network tech, like you can go into Super Home Centre and you can buy a 10 meg hub, like literally 10/100 meg hub. I can't remember the last time I bought anything that wasn't gigabit, but no, you can still buy 10/100 meg hubs here. And you're looking at Wi-Fi devices out here, it's branded as high speed. And it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, but it's not anymore. So he was either trying to rip me off because, let's be honest, it's in payer, it's Brit Central. They assume Brits have got lots of money, so they charge higher prices anyway. In fact, actually, yes, I'm going to come on to this. I will come on to this actually, because that is a scenario where you do feel like, yes, actually, this is an example. So I do have an example, and it was JTech. So basically, he made the comment once I was querying the price of things, and well, I'm bouncing around a bit now. Right, speeds of stuff is slow, basically. So the technology, you never quite get the fastest tech out here. Like I couldn't get some of the Wi-Fi hotspots that I wanted out here. You can get a lot of them if you can order some stuff on the island, but there's some specific ones that I wanted for this house that I'm in now, and I couldn't get them, and so I had to get them elsewhere. But while I was buying this guy's internet and everything else, he made a comment, and that did stick with me. Clearly not very much because I'd forgotten about it until just now, but it did stick with me at the time. Bear with me. He made a comment where, because I was paying the installation up front, I think I paid like €300 up front. And I'd asked the question, oh, do we pay that up front? Because in the UK, if you're subscribing to like Virgin Media or something like that, you very rarely, I mean, you might have an installation fee. Quite often it gets waived, but you might have an installation fee. But basically everything, the router, all of that gets wrapped up into the monthly cost, and you're in a 2-year contract, and kind of everything's bundled into the price. Whereas here, you buy all the kit up front, and then you don't have a contract. It's just a rolling monthly contract because you've already bought the kit. So you're not tied into 12 months or whatever. So anyway, because I didn't know that's how it worked out here at the time, when he mentioned like the €300, I was like, oh, so what, is €300 up front? And he made this comment, and it was like, yeah, but you're from Britain, you guys can all afford it. And that did stick with me because there is a perception that British people that are coming in as expats or British business owners, because we pay less tax than the local Cypriots and things like that, there is a perception that actually you can pay more and therefore they can charge you more. So actually, Simon, with what you were experiencing, maybe it was that. Maybe it was like, I will just try it on, because let's be honest, if you've got an English accent, you've got white skin, they assume you've got money, and maybe they're just trying it on. I haven't, like I say, not experienced it massively, but I definitely got that undertone when you were in the English areas. It felt like because you were in English that you could pay more, and that therefore there probably is an element of Cypriot pricing versus local pricing. Cypriot pricing, local pricing versus like your expat pricing. Let's say. What else have we got? From Drumfill68. Hi, Mark. Does Cyprus manage its illegal immigration asylum seeker issues more effectively than in the UK? I don't know. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you this because I'm not very good at answering your questions tonight, am I? I don't really know anything. But what I'm going to show you is this, because when we were looking at places to live, and this is well worth you guys doing if you're looking to live out here. So I'm going to get rid of the train. Go away. Take the train off. Just want this. Oh, come on. Can't even use Google Maps. Let's just go traffic. Oh, take the traffic off. Take the train off. Go away. There we go. Gone. Right. Okay. So asylum seekers, migrants, and everything else. Now, right. I'm going to say this, and this will probably upset some people. I'm an immigrant here. Let's be honest. I'm an immigrant in Cyprus, and immigrants get a bad rep. Immigrants in the UK get a bad rep, Brexit and everything else. I think it's more about illegal immigrants than people that can bring and add value to a country. But anyway, point is, immigrants, it's kind of a bit of a dirty word. And let's be honest, I am an immigrant in Cyprus. If you're coming to the UK as a British expat, you're an immigrant. You fit in with the Cypriot ways. Don't try and change Cyprus to be like it is back in the UK. Just, you fit in with the local culture and everything else. However, with illegal immigrants or with asylum seekers or with people at the lower end of that scale, I'm trying to say that in the nicest possible way, inevitably you get crime. Because let's be honest, people that have got nothing, they don't really have anything to lose. And if people are stealing to eat, then they've got nothing. So you're going to get crime from those people. And the more people like that you have in the country, the more crime will go up. And I think that's partly why people talk about, the immigrants in Cyprus causing a lot of the petty crime. Because let's be honest, if you've come here, when you look at where people are coming from, they're coming from the likes of Syria, they're coming from around here, they're coming from Africa, right? So when people are coming to Cyprus and they've literally got nothing, crime goes up. It does. Not to the extent it's going up in the UK, but then that's because, let's be honest, the immigration is less in Cyprus than it is in the UK. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, because when we were looking, and this is Cyprus Unfiltered, so I'm just going to give you my view, and it's my opinion. You can argue with it. I don't care. This is my opinion. When we were looking at where we wanted to live in Cyprus, we were torn between Paphos and Larnaca. Now, we had Paralimni mentioned to us. We were told if we come over to here, Paralimni, this is really nice. And you've got Prataras here, and if you come away on holiday, this is like massive tourist central. In the summer, it's buzzing. Ayia Napa's buzzing. It's all great. And then in the winter, it's dead as a doornail. Nothing happens, right? But we went to Paralimni because people were saying it was cheaper. People were saying it was nice and property prices are cheaper there. So when we were doing our trial living in 2022, we went to Paralimni. Now, that's probably one of the only times, and people can argue this, I'm sure, but it's probably one of the only times where I felt a little bit uneasy. And why did I feel uneasy? Well, because I wasn't surrounded by Cypriots and I wasn't surrounded by British people. Take from that what you will. Now, it seems that it's more this side of the island than this side of the island. I'm not saying that to be racist. What I'm saying is that you got plenty of people coming in from all parts of the world. But for me personally, I just feel like when this was a tourist central, I've got another story. I have another story. But when this is tourist central and you've got lots of people coming here to work or whatever, when those tourists go away and the work dries up, in my head, I don't know if this is true, but in my head, if you've got people that are living there that have come from abroad and now all of a sudden the work dries up because there's no tourists, well then surely crime is going to be higher. I don't know. There's no official stats that you can go. You can't go to like the police.uk. But, when you've got somewhere like Paphos where there's something happening all year round, people are technically then getting paid all year round, right? I could be totally wrong. It's just the opinion I formed, right? But the story I did want to tell, crappy service, right? We went to Prataras, and in fact, I've seen this on Facebook. There's a cash point that was scamming people as well. Or there's a shop. There's a cash point down here. In fact, I didn't say it. I was going to talk about it in one of the videos. But anyway, there was a cash point scamming people. Where basically it was doing something with the cash cards, and then when you went to complain, or somebody. No, actually, I don't want to say it because I'm making it up. I'm not making it up. There is something. Have a look on Facebook. Have a look at like Prataras scam or something like that. There was something on the seafront. It was either a restaurant or a cash point or something where they were basically stealing money from you, and you were paying double, and they were relying on people not checking because you're in holiday mode and everything else, and because they're all tourists. By the time you've realised there's a problem, they've already flown home to wherever they live. But anyway, we were down here. And this was in 2022, again, when we were doing our trial living, and we went to Pizza Hut, but that wasn't where we had the crappy service. So we went to this place, and basically there was an arcade attached to, in fact, I'm going to find it. Where's the seafront? Well, that's the main bit, isn't it? Because then you've got, right, so you've got a McDonald's here. I know the McDonald's. Look at that, temporarily closed. Why is it temporarily closed? Because nothing happens in Pretoria. I've never known McDonald's to close. There you go. Nothing happens there. It's dead. Anyway, it was somewhere down here. Where's the roundabout? Might have been this. Oh, sorry, I might be boring you guys now. I'm going to find this place because there's an arcade attached to a pub or a restaurant. That's the one. Yeah, I thought it was by the roundabout. So we went in here. I don't mind sharing. Come on, go away. Move. Okay, can't. Won't let me move. I zoomed in. No. Anyway, whatever. We went in here. And you'll see there's an arcade on the side. And so my son at the time, he was like 6 years old. Daddy, can we go to the arcade? Cool, let's go to the arcade. So we went in and we walked up these steps. And as we went in, we were greeted by one of the waiters. Hi there, how can I help? Big beaming smile on his face. He had a big beaming smile. And it's probably the only time I've felt complete falsity, like fabrication. Like you talk about people wearing masks. We told him, we're just here for a drink. We're going to go to the arcade. And as soon as I said, we're just having a drink, I'd barely finished the sentence to say we're just going to the arcade. His smile was like, hi, how are you? How can I help? Gone, turned and walked off. Didn't even take our drinks order, nothing. Because why? If you're going to order food, you're going to tip the people. And these guys are clearly reliant on tips. So, this place was probably the worst service we'd had just based on that experience, and the machines and everything else, it was okay. It was fine. But I just didn't like what I experienced there. Now, you could argue that's just one restaurant and everything else. And yeah, it is just one restaurant. But the thing is, when you've got a high footfall of tourists, you can offer crap service because people are going to pay anyway. You're only there for a week or two and then you go home and then the next set of tourists come in and they do the same thing. So what I find, and it just goes back to what I was saying earlier, the further away you come from the tourist hotspots, generally the better service you receive. Why am I talking about all this? I was talking about crime, because I was asked about immigration. I really go off on a tangent. Right, so crime, immigration. Talking about the immigration over there. Down here, this is something that we spotted. Now, Mandria is quite nice in that if you go to Mandria Square, actually looks really nice. It's kind of like nice and modern and everything else. In fact, actually, let's just drop the little dude down there. We're still on? Yeah. So you've got this square here, you've got some restaurants and some kind of market on the go there. Anyway, but it's all been redone the last couple of years and it was quite nice. And a few restaurants somewhere gone the wrong way. But anyway, this way. There's okay. So the street view can't go down. So basically all of this area here, all restaurants. And it's really nice. You know, there's some kind of festival on the go there when this photo was taken. But the point is, we were looking here and property is cheaper here for sure. And because property is cheaper, from the research I kept doing, you know, it did seem like there was a little bit more crime. Now, there'll be people that live there, and I know people that live there. It's like Mandria is lovely, and it was fine. And to its defense, we were looking at a house to rent somewhere. Let me go to satellite view. I'll tell you the story. Yeah, we walked down here, and it was so we were looking here. Well, actually, this house, this villa here was for rent. I'll show you because I didn't live there and I'm not going to live there, so I can show you. This villa here was for rent. And we'd gone out in Mandria one evening. Again, Cyprus being safe, we'd gone out for dinner. We walked down here, didn't know the streets, didn't know where we were, walking through the night, did not feel unsafe whatsoever. And we came down here because we were like, let's have a look and see what the villa's like while we were there, right? Now, this comes back to, I don't like the fact, this is the villa that we looked at. There's the pool and everything else. I don't like the fact that you can see, if my son's swimming in there, people can walk past the gate. And I don't like the fact that you can just see straight into the garden. That doesn't do it for me. That doesn't feel safe, even though it's probably fine. I just think, because I've got my UK hat on, I like privacy. You know, when I talk about me liking privacy, that's what I mean when I say I like privacy. Now, we were here and I'd got my torch out because I was looking at this and I was going, what's this? It kind of looks like a garage, but it kind of also looks like a shed that's been tacked onto the side. And while I'm shining with the torch, because it's dark, we have these houses here. And a local guy came out and he challenged me. And he's like, everything all right? What are you doing? And it felt, I mean, it's almost unbelievable to say, if you heard it, if you were that guy, I was like, yeah, we're just looking to rent the house. I don't know what I'd think if I ran into me late at night shining torch in the window. It's like, yeah, just looking to rent it. No, you're looking to burgle it. Anyway, the fact that we were challenged, I actually felt quite nice. I quite liked the area because in my head, I'm thinking, if we were to rent that house and somebody was there late at night and we were away somewhere, then your neighbours are looking out for you. So I thought that was lovely. You know, we were getting challenged by the locals. I thought that was great. So that was really cool. But again, why am I showing you all of this? Well, because with Mandria being what it is and where it is, you have Timmy. Now, you see Timmy here, it's quite near the airport and everything else. And so you kind of go, Timmy would be a great location. Mandria's a great location. Like Mandria's in the flight path anyway, so you get the planes flying over. You might go, Timmy's really good. It's just out of the flight path and it's really close to the airport. I don't know if this makes a difference, but when you zoom in here, it's just disappeared. There it is. Timmy Refugee Estate. Now, I don't really want to be living by that. Yes, I'm being discriminative. Is that right? Is that right? I am discriminating against refugees. Not because I've ever had any problems with refugees here on the island. I haven't. I've never had a problem with a refugee at any point in my life. But again, when it comes back to people that have got nothing, they might not be involved in violent crime, but they could be involved in petty crime because, let's be honest, they're trying to just eat. They're trying to feed their families. So, you know, while I don't justify crime in that sense, you kind of go, if you've got people that have got nothing, well, then there's a higher chance of crime around this area than there would be where you don't have the refugee camp. And there's a few of them on the island. There's some over, I think there's some Larnaca way. I think there's some, you know, there's various ones dotted around. So is there a refugee problem? You know, does it matter? I mean, only you can decide that. But for me personally, like, I wouldn't want to rent a house right next to a refugee camp because I certainly wouldn't want my son walking around on his own maybe nothing would happen. Maybe I'm being prejudiced for the wrong reasons. I don't know. If I am, then I am, but that's a really long-winded answer to a question I forgot was even asked. Let me go back to the questions. What have we got? Have you? No, I've lost it. I've lost it now. Where am I? Hi, Mark. Oh, there we go. Right. So that was from, does Cyprus manage its illegal immigration asylum seeker issues more effectively than the UK? I didn't answer the question at all, did I? I waffled for about 15 minutes and I didn't answer the question. I don't know is the answer to that question. Premium 2477. Have you had a look at the property market in Cyprus? How would you compare investing in property in Cyprus versus the UK? Not only have I had a look at it, I'm in it. So we sold up in the UK and we are investing in Cyprus and we're building in Cyprus now. We are developing property out here over in the sea caves. So I think the property market out here is red hot, to be honest. I will do some more property related content because there's quite a few people that have been asking me about property specifically. So that's the short answer to your question. I think it's really good out here at the moment. I think a couple of examples. I think the UK, property in the UK at the moment, if you're a professional landlord, it's fine. If you're a professional landlord, you're following all the rules and regulations, all of these new things that are coming in with the abolishment of Section 21. And then you've only got Section 8. With all that stuff that's coming in, if you're a professional landlord and you've done all your checks and you've got all your precautions in place, it's not going to affect you massively because you've already done the referencing and all the checks on your tenants. And if you've got a good screening process, you're probably okay for the most part. There'll always be people that are complete arseholes and you'll get somebody that tries to take the mick. But for the most part, you're probably okay. Now, for those of you that have got rental properties in the UK, if you're not running it through a limited company, you'll know all too well that the UK government is squeezing landlords left, right, and centre. And I think it started coming in about 2018, 2019. I can't remember what section it was, but there was something where basically, let's just say, for argument's sake, you had a property and you were taking home. Oh, no, sorry, not taking home. Let's say you were invoicing £1,000 a month. So your rent coming in for that property was £1,000 a month. Now, if you run that through a limited company, you can offset the tax if you've got a mortgage on there. So you can offset the interest, sorry, not the tax. You can offset the interest against tax. You can offset any repairs. You've even got capital allowances that you can offset. There's a whole bunch of things you can offset if it's inside a limited company. If it's in your personal name, they took that away. They changed it and it was like, first of all, it's 100%, then you can claim 75%, then 50%, and like 25%, then nothing. So if you were charging £1,000 rent for your property in the UK, and you had a mortgage on there, let's say that was £500 a month, you would still be charged tax on the full £1,000, despite the fact that £500 of it could have been offset. So you get taxed on the whole £1,000 rather than the £500. And if you've got repairs and everything else, it doesn't matter. You don't get to offset any of that against tax. So they make it very unattractive for investors in the UK to invest in property. You flip that out here. And I was talking to my accountant probably about a month ago on this, and he was telling me that, let's say you take the same scenario. Let's say you're charging somebody €1,000 a month out here. The Cypriot government's approach on this is that they assume you're going to have some sort of repair. So they only tax you on the first €800 anyway. So even if you're charging €1,000, you're only going to get charged tax on the first €800, and then the rest of it can be reduced as you've got more expenses. So already it feels way more favorable for landlords out here. Now, property at the moment is being bought by lots of foreign investors. I'm part of that problem. We've bought land and we're developing property. We are part of that problem. I'm aware of that. But when you've got extremely wealthy people coming in, and I'm not putting myself in that category, I'm talking about when you've got the Russians, when you've got the Israelis, when you've got the Chinese, and they're buying like vast amounts of land and they're developing property like huge scales, it's pushing the prices up for the locals. So locals are being priced out of their own market, and it's tragic, but it's what happens. But if you can afford to buy out here, what it means is that actually, your property is pretty much appreciating in value. I like the property market out here. Like I said, that's why we're investing out here. So, and like I say, I will start doing more property related content. I won't keep banging on about it tonight, but for a lot of the reasons that we talked about, we like it out here, and I think it's big opportunity That's my opinion. That's why I'm doing it. You know, I'm not just saying it. We're actually doing it. We're actively doing it. Okay. Okay, Asher, no, not towards it. Hang on a minute. Oh, I've lost. That's probably why. Asher, not towards us, but it was recently in the news that Cypriots are discriminating other nations. Oh, I didn't read that. I didn't read that, Asher. Okay. Maybe that's true. Like I say, I've never really felt discriminated against. So, you know, I'm fortunate. Maybe maybe there are other communities that do get discriminated against, but I personally don't really feel it. So Andy Hawkins, car theft near zero. Our rental car had a puncture and we were told just leave the car open and leave the keys in the ignition and they will be along later to collect it. No way. Where was that, Andy? What part of Cyprus was that in? Michael Cummings, according to Google, Cypriot coastlines were hit by tsunamis in 1202, 1222, 1303, and 1953. The one in 1953 occurred after a destructive double earthquake, which generated a small wave around 1 meter. I mean, my son would be straight in there. he'd be jumping straight into that. I'm not worried about the tsunamis then. If that's what's happened, statistically, I'll probably be dead before the next one. So I'm not going to worry about the tsunamis. Thanks, Michael. Interested. Andrew Oliver, we are conflicted with new build versus resale. The former PR modern 19% VAT resale temp. Okay. Fishing, no VAT. Nervous about significant investment with only a temporary visa. Thoughts? Well, I get that. You don't necessarily want to be buying in a country that you're not guaranteed to be able to stay in. Oh, there's a lot of points in there, Andrew. Right. I probably should do a whole property video on this. In summary, it depends how much you want to spend. If you're spending above 300,000 plus the VAT on a new build, you can get permanent residency. If that's out of your budget, then you are potentially investing in a place that you can't necessarily stay. Correct. With respect, do you buy new build versus resale? It depends if you need the residency. So if you need residency, the only way you can get it through residential property is by buying brand new from a developer. So for instance, when we sell a property, we would be able to offer permanent residency through the sale of a property because it's if it's above that certain threshold. If it's below, you can't. Most developers on the island will do that. That's not just something that we do. It's like most developers on the island will do that. It's just if you spend more than 300,000 plus the VAT, then you can get permanent residency through investment. Now, let's say you really like a house, but it's secondhand, and you go, I want to buy that house. I like the area, I like the house, whatever it might be. I want the land that's associated with it, but it's secondhand and you can't get permanent residency through it. Well, you could still buy another house, assuming, depending on your budget. And again, this is why it's all circumstantial. You could buy another house. You don't have to live in the house. You just need to invest money over here. You could invest that money in a company and have that invested and go towards your PR. You could invest that money in commercial property, like a shop or a restaurant or something. You could buy multiple commercial units. And as long as it goes to above the value of 300,000, then you can still get permanent residency. So there's like a whole host of ways of doing it. And then you're talking about the VAT, the 19% and everything else. Well, right, I mean, mouse has gone. Right. So yeah, the VAT, I mean, the 19%, again, this is all different now. So if you register property, I think this right now for planning permission before 2023, then you could get 5% VAT on the property up to the value of 475,000. And it was 5% VAT on the whole amount if you were going to live in it for the next 10 years. If you moved out partway through, then you would end up having to repay some of the VAT back and it'd be on a pro rata basis. That then changed, and up until I think it's June this year, I have to double check, I think it's June this year, you can get 5% VAT on the first 300,000, and then between 300,000 and 475,000, you pay 19%, and then anything above 475, I believe you then pay the full 19%. Now, the same conditions apply. You've got to live in it for 10 years. But if you are buying, let's say you buy a property and it's 475,000, let's just max it out. So it doesn't flick over to the full 19%. For the first 300,000, you'll pay 5%. So whatever 5% of 300,000 is, you pay that on top. And then between 300,000 and 475, that difference, that 175,000, you'd pay 19% on top. So you pay 19% of 175 plus 5% of 300, and that'll give you the total VAT bill. But that's changing because if you don't have your property registered for full planning, things like June this year, then after that, any properties that's registered later, you end up paying the full amount on. So again, there's so many variables for this, Andrew, and it just depends on what your budget is, what you're looking to do, and everything else. But yeah, I mean, if you don't have permanent residency here, then yeah, it is absolutely a risk. If you're going to buy and invest a load of money into a country that you can't legally stay in, that is a big risk. And what you might be better off doing is, choosing one of the other options that keeps you flexible. If you can rent, or if you can rent and buy something commercial, or if you want to buy something that's secondhand and you can buy commercial. Like I say, it all depends on circumstances. I don't know what your budget is, but there's a bit of information there. Hopefully that helps. Simon, we've got, okay, so Cyprus more recently had articles about the authorities cracking down on illegals and deporting them. Get the impression Cyprus is a lot swifter at removing illegals. Actually, Simon, thank you. That is a really good point. I did see something. Let me just see if I'm going to just check the news. Cyprus illegal immigrants and deported. Well, not illegal immigrants. It was just, so basically, right. So just while I'm looking for this, hang on a minute. Sorry, 1 second. I clearly can't talk to you guys and Google search at the same time. There we go. Right. Okay. Right. So if you come to Cyprus and you're a heathen and you commit a crime, you will get deported. So even me, as a British person here on a yellow slip through my wife's EU yellow slip, and I'm on an EU permit. If I commit a crime and I get a criminal record, I'm gone. No two ways about it. Like literally, although I'm here on a yellow slip, they don't tolerate crime. If you're on a pink slip, you literally, if you commit any sort of crime, you get deported. I believe that's the same for the yellow slip, actually. As I'm saying it now, I know 100% is with the pink slips. But bottom line is, if you commit a crime on the island, you get deported, And I did read something. I'm just looking now. In fact, let me just make this a little bit more interactive. So 12 people deported after immigration checks in Paphos. Now, this is just immigration checks. They do deport people. But I read something recently, and I'm glad, Simon, you've said that, because I'd actually forgotten about this. But I did read something recently where somebody had committed a crime and they'd just gone, deported, gone. And I can't remember what it was, where it was, but anyway, they were deported. So yeah, that does cycle back. So thank you for the input on that one, Simon. You should start a YouTube channel. You've got more information than I have. Tangible Nomad, I'm sure you're definitely not over 50 and been exercising. Speaking of that, are there any modern gyms in and around Paphos? Thanks, Tangible Nomad. Yeah, there are gyms in Paphos. Let's go to the map. Let's go to this one and let's type gym. Clearly, there's no gyms in Paphos. Right, let's try again. Search this area. Here we go. There's a whole bunch of them here. Now, I'm going to do it there as well. So you've got Tower Fitness. I'm going to go with Payer because I looked at this one. You've got Tower Fitness and Payer. Now, this gym is packed most of the time, and you've got one gym serving like the whole of Payer here, and it's just packed. There are gyms inside the hotels. You can go to the gyms in the hotels, but what you'll find quite often is that the gyms are seasonal. So when you go into the gym and you go and join a hotel's gym, unless that hotel is open all year round, a lot of the hotels will close. Certainly around Coral Bay, a lot of the hotels close. So the hotels close for the off-peak season, generally between about January and March. A lot of the hotels close. So if you've joined a gym, they will openly say, we're only open for like 9-10 months of the year. Like, That's a bit rubbish then, isn't it? So then you don't go to those gyms. They've got, so this says it's a municipality gym, but it's generally the outdoor gyms. And, you know, you do get the outdoor gyms. It's just like a calisthenics. So you're using your body weight and they're all free. There's loads of them dotted up and down the beach and on the paths. But generally, the gyms that you've got, I mean, what I would recommend is just come on to them and have a look at the reviews, so just picking some at random. So start from the top down. Hyper Fitness Club, you've got that one there, 4.5. You've got Johnny's Gym. This is a new gym. I used to buy my protein shakes from these guys because they've got a shop in the middle of Paphos. But you've got Johnny's Gym, that one's 4.9. I've got opinions on some of these, but I won't give you those tonight just because I can do a gym video if you want. But I mean, I've been to some of them, but what I do find is that the further into town you come, the harder it is to park. The further out of town you come, the easier it is to park. But then, Johnny's Gym being a new one, loads of people went to that, and you can still be quite tricky to park. And I would just come and have a look on. I'll just come and have a look on here. But what I will say is there is a distinct lack of 24-hour gyms. When I left the UK, I lived in a place called Burbage, and that used to join onto a town called Hinckley. And in Hinckley, I think there was either 2 or 3 24-hour gyms. Like, why do you need 2 or 3 24-hour gyms in Hinckley? But you had 24-hour gyms. You used to be able to go to multiple 24-hour gyms any time of the day where you just sign in with like a key fob or whatever, and you could go to the gym anytime you wanted. The gyms in Cyprus, most of them aren't 24 hours. In fact, I only know of one that is 24 hours. That's, again, part of a hotel. And most of them aren't 24 hours. But even then, when you go, so the ones that aren't 24 hours, a lot of them aren't open on Sunday. My gym doesn't open on a Sunday. That sucks because sometimes if I've missed a day or whatever, I've got something come up in the week, I might want to go gym on Sunday and I can't. And if you go on Saturday, then they close at like 3:00. Like, Saturday is really strange out here for shops and stuff because a lot of the shops will close at 2:00 on a Saturday. And then quite a lot of them aren't open on a Sunday. And gyms are the same. So I don't know, fitness doesn't seem to be as big a thing out here. Like, what you'll find is that the expats are more into fitness than the locals. The locals, I mean, clearly you do get locals going to the gym. In the gym I go to, you see some locals that are absolute meatheads, really into their weights. But I don't know, I just think it seems to be more of a foreign thing, or certainly a UK thing, where you can go to the gym any time of day or night. It's open 7 days a week. And, I don't even see that many kind of spas out here. Like, if you go to, what's the one that you've got in the UK? You've got like Ballantyne's Health Club. You've got all these different health clubs where you go and you've got saunas and jacuzzis and swimming pools and the gym and all of that stuff. And like, you get a bit of that with the hotels. You can go to like Minthy's and pay through the nose, or you can go to Aphrodite's Hills and pay through the nose. But you don't get many of those. And a lot of the gyms are just gyms, So I don't know, my experiences with gyms out here, it's a shame, really. I think if anybody fancies setting up a gym, I think, if you do a 24-hour gym, you'll do well. There goes my top tip for the night. Well, what we got? Andy Hawkins. Car was in Paya, where we now live full time. Feels safe as houses. Nice. Good stuff. I think, to be honest, like, I know somebody for a fact that got broken into in Paya. But there's a lot of people that also haven't. You get broken into anywhere. There'll be people that have been broken into in Tala. There's people that have been broken into in Coral Bay. Like there'll be a lot of people that haven't. And again, I think it comes down to circumstances. It comes down to sometimes luck of the draw. But I'm glad you've not had any trouble in Paya. And interestingly, about then telling you to leave the car there, I know when I've taken the car back to places, like if I've dropped it off at the airport when I used to hire cars coming out here, they just kind of tell you to put the keys in the petrol cap and you just close it in, or you chuck them in the boot and they lock them in. They come down with a spare set of keys, and they're really easy going with it all. It's not like hiring cars in the UK. I hate hiring cars in the UK because they're looking to get every single pound out of you for tiniest little marks, and they come around, they've got these freaking tapes to like measure dents and everything else. And they want to fleece you for everything. The UK just seems to want to fleece money out you all the time. And so, yeah, I'm glad you've not had any issues. Right, we've got Michael Greenwood. We've got, what's the minimum you need to invest in Cyprus? I'm going to assume you mean for permanent residency. And if that's the case, then it needs to be 300,000 euros plus the VAT. Although actually, as I'm saying that, it's 300,000 euros. If you invest 300,000 euros into a company, or if you invest it in second-hand property, there's no VAT on those. If it's a commercial property, actually, commercial property probably is. I don't. I would double check that. Actually, I'm not an expert in this. If you invest 300 grand in a company, are they expecting you to pay VAT on top? And therefore, if you've got to invest like 360 grand as opposed to the 300, I'm not sure. But if you are investing in a new build, you have to pay the VAT on top. If you're investing in commercial property, you might have to pay VAT on that anyway. But it's about 300 grand plus. So 300 grand is the minimum. It might be plus VAT, depending on what you're investigating. Best to double check it. Asha, you're talking about the incident in two private schools in Paphos. A teenager teenagers posted some silly messages on Instagram talking about school purge. Police found them and deported the whole family. That's right. Yeah, cheers, Asha. Yeah, so again, we've not had terrorist attacks out here. There's been a few things that have been foiled, but yeah, we have had in a couple of instances scares in the schools where there's been a threat. And in this instance, yeah, you did right actually. So we had an email come around from the school, and somebody, like some kids, had gone, "Oh, well, there's going to be a purge in the school on this date." Police found them, caught them, and then, as my wife said, literally not just deported the kids, deported the entire family. Gone. That was it. So they are vigilant. Premium 2477. Would you buy used apartments in Cyprus worth around 200 grand to let out, or maybe Airbnb? What do you think of that type of strategy in Cyprus? Well, the thing is, it's very seasonal. The cash flow is going to be higher for sure. It's going to be seasonal in the tourist season you'll be rammed, and then off season, depending on where you buy, will depend on the kind of footfall you get. So again, it comes back to, I'm going to come back to this for a second. It comes back to, if you're in Paphos, you're probably going to be okay. You'll probably get people coming there all year round. If you come over to this side of the island, it just seems to be dead as a doornail when you go off season. So it's busy in the summer. You know, all around here is busy in the summer, but like you come down here, I probably wouldn't be buying anything down there for Airbnb. If I was relying on that as a regular cash flow, I probably wouldn't be doing that. So if I was going to buy, I mean, Limassol is generally a good area. Larnaca is a good area. Nicosia, what I don't get actually with Nicosia is that when you look at prices online, you see quite a lot of affordable property in Nicosia, despite the fact that it's the capital. And I just think it's because less expats go there. Like more people, like a lot of businesses will flock towards Limassol. So the Limassol prices go up. You've got people going to Larnaca. So Larnaca prices are more expensive. And you've got people going to Paphos because people like to be near the coast. People that generally come from the UK and are all been sun-starved, they kind of go down to the coastal areas. So Nicosia, despite the fact that it's been the capital, property does seem to be more affordable there sometimes. But again, it's who's your market? Like Airbnb is a business. People look at it and go, I'll just buy an apartment and I'll just rent it out to people on Airbnb and I'll make loads of money. But fundamentally, you're running a business at that point. If you've got one property or you've got multiple properties, and your cash flow is going to dip off and you're going to have peaks and troughs and everything else. And maybe you'd be better off putting that into just residential and having somebody live there all year round. But it depends. What's my opinion on it? Would I do it? It depends on my appetite at the time. It depends on how involved I want to be, or if I want to find a company to manage it for me. And I don't know. I like regular cash flow, and I like to know roughly what I'm going to be getting each month. And you get that with longevity. Certainly in Cyprus, when rental contracts are typically 12 months as a minimum, you pretty much know where you stand. People can not pay you rent and all of that, and so on and so forth. But I just think operationally, like we did in the UK, we started with serviced accommodation. We were doing essentially Airbnb, but we were doing serviced accommodation, renting to contractors, renting to tourists and people in our area. And operationally, I just couldn't be doing with it. We were working with cleaning companies, you're working with linen companies because you're changing the bedding over. You're doing all of these different changeovers. You were setting like 2-night minimum stays, 3-night minimum stays. Operationally, it was more intense than just running HMOs. So we did the HMO route in the UK. So would I do Airbnb? I don't know. It's not me. It's not where I am in my life. I probably wouldn't. But for you, it might be worth it. It might be worth the extra hassle to get the higher cash flow in the peak season, because literally you can, I say, almost name your price. I mean, depending on what apartment you've got, you can charge good rates through the summer because loads of people want to come. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but anyway, that's my view on it. Oh, okay. We've got some more questions coming in. What time are we on? 11:05. Blimey, is it 11:05 already? Okay, I've still got the map on. Let's turn the map off. Come back to me. There we go. Okie dokie. How many more we got? Where am I? Some you invest. Okay. Okay. What about for long-term vanilla buy-to-let? Not sure how capital growth for older apartments would compare to similar priced houses in the UK. Oh, I see. Well, don't want to mislead you here, and I don't want to misguide you here. And there's a lot of variables. It depends where in Cyprus. It depends where in the UK. And the thing is, what I would say here is go on to the likes of Bazaraki, go on to the likes of Facebook, see what's for sale. Go on to Buy Sell Cyprus, go on to those sites and see what people are selling. Fees aside, Buy Sell Cyprus charges 10% to sell a house, but fees aside, like have a look at what people are selling and have a look at the equivalent new builds in the area. Now, new builds will always be more expensive anyway. But what I would look at is, I'll put this. I would look at what's selling. I would look at the number of units for sale. And I would try and look for historical data for an area. So Paphos, I dare say, will likely have more of a boom in the longer term than perhaps say Limassol, although prices are more expensive in Limassol. And the reason why I say that, and this is just my opinion, could be totally wrong, so take it with a pinch of salt. But because Limassol's already had lots of investment there, if you go to the seafront in Limassol, you've got the skyscrapers, you've got loads of money pouring into Limassol. It's where all the business is in Limassol. In Paphos, and this has been coming for many years, but they've now finally got it approved. In fact, let me just show you this. We go to Paphos Marina. Oh, can't spell Marina, but there you go, Paphos Marina. So there's a website dedicated to the Paphos Marina. That's the most boring website I think I've ever seen. Let's not go to that website then. Right, let's just look at this. Let's just go to news. Let's do that. Let's go to news. Paphos Marina. After 19 years of delays, the Paphos Marina is back on the table. And let's go to this. Look, they're looking at building this. Now, where are they building that? Well, let me show you. They're building it right here, Hotima Bay. This road here is basically kind of this road here. And you see these apartments here, and there's a wedding venue here. Well, that is this stuff here. Okay. So it's literally the marina's all going to be around here, basically. So around here, probably something to do with this, but basically this area here is where they're going to be building onto. You can see this here. In fact, there you go. So I've got it slightly wrong. It's literally this triangular patch here. Why am I telling you this? Well, if I was a betting man and I wanted to buy something that would go up in value longer term, I would be looking to buy potentially now around here, because when the marina comes, the prices will go up, because that's what happened in Larnaca. That's what happened in Limassol. That's what happened in Ayia Napa. You've got the Ayia Napa marina, So because it doesn't have the marina yet, I think Paphos, this region, is a better bet for long-term growth than other parts of the island. Just my opinion. Could be totally wrong. And the thing is, that's come after 19 years. It's a bit of a running joke for the locals. They've been talking about it for 2 decades. They've now finally got it signed off. And like everything in Cyprus, the moment you get things like this, it's going to be slow. So it'll be years before it comes along. There'll be absolute carnage when they're developing it all. There'll be roadworks. That road will be miserable. If anybody's going from Paya into Paphos, it'll be miserable for a while, I'm sure. But once it's built, if you bought something before the uplift, people are already starting to price it in now, in the expectation that if they sell something, it's going to go up, and they're talking about it coming in. You're seeing all the adverts. It may happen, but that's probably where I'd be putting my money. Well, it's not probably, I am. But we're investing in the sea caves. That's where we're developing land in the sea caves. So that's where we're doing it. And the expectation is that that area is going to come up in value more over time. I'm also developing there because, let's be honest, it's close to us. There's no point me developing on the other side of the island because I live here. So hopefully that answers the question anyway. Okay, where are we going? Long term, no, done that one. Jackie Mazer, you also need a license to buy a holiday let yet, and I believe that's much harder if you're a non-EU citizen. Yeah, I think you're right, Jackie. Actually, I think you are right there. I mean, I've not done it. I haven't done a holiday let here. Like I said, I probably wouldn't. It's not really what I want to do in life anymore. But it's well worth looking into. So yeah, good call, Jackie. Thanks very much. Premium 2477. I was thinking Larnaca, and that's where I'll be based. Have you heard of the Land of Tomorrow project there? Looks promising. I actually haven't. Let's have a Google. Let's make it interactive. What is the Land of? Is it while I'm looking for this? Has anybody else heard of it? The Land of Tomorrow. Land of Tomorrow. What is it? Oh, don't like your website either. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's loaded. That's not very optimized, is it? Anyway, right. What we got? Land of Tomorrow. So we've got vision, development, residential. What is it? What is the vision? A bridge between Larnaca and the future. The Land of Tomorrow's transformative residential development of Cyprus. Distinct focus on. Okay. Well, I can't advise you on that because I don't know. I'm hearing about it right now talking to you, so I don't know. I don't even know whereabouts in Larnaca it is. I'll have a read. Thank you very much. I don't know. It's educational for me tonight as well. Okay, we are looking like we're out of questions. So it's 11:10. I'm probably going to be heading off soon. What I will say, I'm just going to come back to this screen and I'm just going to say, look, guys, if you are finding this helpful in any way, if you're finding it entertaining, if you're finding it interesting, you think somebody else would benefit from hearing it, please give it a share. I think the more of you guys that can share content out there, the more people will see it. And if you're not already subscribed, then give it a subscribe as well. I'd really appreciate it. But in the meantime, I do appreciate people dialing in and watching this. And there's still 31 of you online. I've been waffling on now for 2 hours, 10 minutes, and there's still 31 people online. So massively appreciate you guys dialing in tonight. Really appreciate all the attention that you're giving me, and I really appreciate everybody in the comments as well actually participating, because I think the questions that you guys ask are probably more interesting than the content itself a lot of the time. So I appreciate you all dialing in and all participating. I'm going to come back to me one last time and just see if there's anything else. So Asha's saying that's where the Ed Sheeran concert was. Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah, so Ed Sheeran was playing a couple of years ago, about 18 months ago. Whereabouts was that? Sorry, excuse me. Burping down the microphone. Whereabouts was that, Asha? Whereabouts? I could just Google it, couldn't I? Ed Sheeran. Cyprus. What was the... where was it? I read Greek. Where was it? I don't know. Ed Sheeran concert information. Concert in Larnaca, Cyprus. I know he's in Larnaca. Well, anyway, Ed Sheeran came there. And it seems like a lot of people coming that way as well. There seems to be more interesting acts or more popular acts coming to the island. So maybe Larnaca's a good bet. Oh, sorry, I'm looking over. Literally, you guys are just looking at the side of my head and I thought I was sharing the screen. There you go, look, that's what I was doing. Anyway, back. Yeah, it's where the Ed Sheeran concert was. Cool. But I will look into that. I will look into this place, Land of Tomorrow. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Cool, guys. Right, well, there's still 31 of you online. Kind of worn out from talking, I'm not going to lie. Been talking a lot tonight. Hopefully you found it interesting. If anybody's got any other questions, please do ask them now, because I'm going to be going in a couple of minutes. Still got the water bottle. Love this water bottle. For any of you watching it last week, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you didn't watch it last week, you haven't got a clue. But anyway, it's a good water bottle. Cool. Right. Well, there's nothing else coming through in the chat, so I will leave it there, I think. If anybody has got any other questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. Otherwise, appreciate you all dialing in. Really appreciate it. And if there's anything you want to see, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. Like I say, if there's enough people asking for something, I will do something on it. But for now, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to wish you all a good week. Appreciate you. Thanks for dialing in. Probably going to go to bed now. I'm quite worn out. So I will see you all next week, for those of you dialing in next week. Until then, I'll catch you all soon. I'm going to drop to the screen so I don't have the awkward me asking, is it still on? We can leave it there. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you. Have a good evening, and I will catch you next week.